The story begins with the main character not sleeping all night and arriving at the adventure house at dawn. But it seems there is something different here. The phone rang. The boy decided to see what it would say. The system met him in the House of Adventures. In life, they were not husband and wife, but in death, they are buried in the same grave. It is necessary to collect the cries of visitors to the adventure house, and they will be able to exchange them for rewards. The number of cries that can be collected varies from level to level. The protagonist was looking forward to today's visitors. A girl named Xiao Wan was running towards the boss. She was the universal staff of the adventure house. The boy asked the girl what happened, why she ran so fast. Xiao Wan told the boss that they had visitors. She had just heard many people talking about the adventure house at the entrance of the park. There was even a line of people waiting to buy tickets to enter their adventure house. Visitors were eager to see if the adventure house was really haunted. One of them said that she was unable to watch the live broadcast, and so she watched the replay, but was still scared. The protagonist thought that it seemed like many people came here after watching the Nightmare Mission live last night. The live broadcast effect is really good. His phone is full of messages from people who want to come here. The boy began to look through the information about the Zhujiang Adventure House on his phone. There were many messages in which people were discussing the events in the adventure house in horror. The male lead told Xiao Wan that he updated the dark marriage scene yesterday and would personally apply makeup to her today. The girl was very surprised that her boss knew how to apply makeup. Here they went into the dressing room. The boy realized that with everything he had, he could only do basic makeup. What an antiseptic game. Xiao Wan asked the boss again if he really knew how to apply makeup, and if he could do it right, the girl asked him not to make her ugly. The main character laughed and asked the girl not to worry. He promised her not to do that. The boy asked Xiao Wan to open her eyes and look in the mirror to make sure she was satisfied. And so the girl stood up to her full height and began to look at herself. He asked if it was really so beautiful, and that was why she was silent. Xiao Wan said that she had never seen herself so beautiful, but she looked like a dead person. The protagonist asked her to stop looking. He was ready to open the doors right now. The boy asked to hurry to the second floor of the dark marriage stage and not to forget to take a Bluetooth headset with you to receive his orders. He wondered why the house wasn't open yet. The first thing to do was to go to this adventure house. The boy exclaimed to the visitors that they had been waiting for this for so long. He invited everyone to begin a bizarre adventure through the adventure house, the horror of which is limitless. One of the visitors said that he came to visit in order to find something. The person who posted the short video last night, is it him? There were various shouts from the crowd. Someone was shouting that being scary was funny. He could die if they hit him. The visitors were ready to buy a ticket. They were there to play. The protagonist laughed and exclaimed that everyone was full of enthusiasm. No problem. Let them line up for a ticket and everything will be fine. The boy decided that they could go in first. He greeted them and said that they were students of the law school of Zhujiang Medical University. His name was He Sheng. He introduced his older sister, Gao Jie. One of the visitors said that he posted their video last night and it blew up the internet. The older sister said that she wanted to see this place. The protagonist replied that they would see everything now. Tickets are usually priced at $20, but for a limited time they are offering a $10 discount. You can leave your bags on the counter and go inside. The owner of this adventure house must be scared, but the visitors noticed that he was very confident. Before they started the game, the main character asked to let him tell them something about the scenario. Is there a security risk? They were not married in life, but when they die, they will be buried in the same grave. There is a story that has been passed down in Zhujiang for many years. Once upon a time, there was a prince named Ping Jiang who wanted to give his child, who died young, a wedding in the underworld. After talking to a fortune teller, he finally chose a girl based on her date of birth. But this girl's heart belongs to another. To force her to submit, Ping Jiang's warlord pushed her lover into the river, threatening to kill the girl's family. He was thus forcing the girl to submit. After all, it was simply necessary in this scenario. But finally, the girl agrees to marry a dead man for the sake of her parents and is buried alive in a sealed coffin with a bloody candle and a varnished coffin. But after the wedding, strange things started happening in the residence. Copper chickens started bleeding, paper men opened their eyes, and every midnight, a strange female voice wandered around the residence. It's a short scenario. All they have to do is find the exit and get out within 15 minutes. If they're really scared, they can scream at the monitor and it will come for them. And then some of the visitors decided to quickly go inside. He simply had no patience anymore. The boy wished the boys a good time. The brother asked his older sister to wait for her. The boy thought it was like a lamb entering a tiger's mouth. The brother asked his sister to go slower. They heard a strange sound. The girl asked her brother to hurry up because they only had 15 minutes. They noticed that there was music playing in the house and thought the boss was very caring. The brother told his sister that the music was too creepy. The sister calmed her brother down and said that it was just a stupid song. The girl told her brother that she would go first. He asked her to go more slowly. Sister asked Haeshang why he was so cowardly. What a disgrace to the medical school. But the brother explained it by saying that the music was a little unclear. Some voice was inviting them to come in. It was dark there, only thin rays of light and ominous music. It was very scary. This color came through the crack in the door. The door opened with a creak, and the brother and sister began to enter the room. The most interesting part is just beginning. Haeshang said that he felt like this house had become even more creepy. The girl asked her brother to go inside and look for clues. She was more courageous and decisive. Haeshang replied that he would stay here and asked his sister to be careful. The girl said that he was an adult and believed in ghosts. She thought it was just a joke. The guy explained that he was just trying to keep an eye on the escape route. The girl thought that in front of her was a white damask, 1.5 meters from the ground. No one could hang themselves. Tables and chairs are scattered and there are still signs of a struggle on the ground. The haunted house is a deliberate attempt to create the illusion of a violent suicide. This room is occupied by maids, and the strict spirits will not spare even the servants. The girl thought that it was a complete mess. It seemed that they were planning to torture everyone in the mansion to death. The girl said that the haunted house is very well designed, and there may be other clues hidden around it that they are looking for. She suggested that Haeshang go and lift it up to see what was underneath. The boy told his older sister that he couldn't. Then the girl exclaimed that she would do it herself. She wanted even more adventures. She lifted the white veil with a bold, sharp movement. She was becoming more and more excited. There was a man underneath with a mask on his face. Who is it, a man or a doll? The girl was lying on the floor. Her look was very frightened. Her brother started screaming like a chicken. He was clearly not himself. The sister exclaimed that it was just a paper doll. Isn't the morgue of their school scarier than this? The brother replied that his mother said that ghosts were afraid of the crowing of roosters. He was trying to drive out ghosts. After all, his sister told him that there was nothing to be afraid of here. When he tried to continue the conversation, the girl asked him to shut up. Wasn't he a medical student? Why remember what Mom said? What about scientific thinking? The girl regretted going with him to the ghost house. She exclaimed that she needed to find a way out quickly. There was very little time. The girl tried to open the door. It creaked very loudly. There was a burial going on inside. Some people were standing around. White clothes were scattered. They stood like dead people along the walls. The brother told his sister that these paper dolls seemed to be watching them. He thought they were moving. His sister asked his brother not to panic and to go in first. The boy said that he didn't see anything like an exit and that it was a closed room with nothing in it. The sister replied that the owner of this adventure house was a master of psychological suggestion and reading people's thoughts. So they have to go another way. The more they think it's impossible, the more they search. The girl called her brother and asked him to help her open the coffin. The boy asked his sister to let him go. He admitted he was a weakling, but these paper dolls seemed to smile at him. The sister began to examine these dolls. They really did seem alive. The paper doll seemed to be smiling for real. Beads of sweat began to run down the sister's face. These dolls stood along the coffin where the burial took place. She couldn't understand how this was possible. It must be a psychological effect medical students can't give up. There is nothing here, so the exit must be in this coffin. The boy was very scared. The sister still wanted to open the coffin. The girl told her brother that if he is a man, then he should stop talking nonsense and help instead. They began to move the lid of the coffin. The boy exclaimed that these dolls were approaching them. The girl asked her brother not to think about it. It was a fantasy that had played out and they would soon find a way out, after which they would disgrace the owner of this adventure house when the time came. Meanwhile, in the observation room, the guy was sitting with French fries and thinking that ideals are great, but reality may not be as ideal as theirs. Xiao Wan said it was time to get ready. They were going to open the coffin. The girl exclaimed that she understood him. They began to push the lid of the coffin harder and harder. It was very difficult for them, but they finally managed to do it. And then there was a loud bang. The dolls' people gathered around the boys. The boy and the girl fell to the floor from this loud sound. They were a little scared. Some girl appeared from under the coffin lid and flew up. The boy was very tense. The girl flew higher and higher, looking menacingly at them. Streams of scarlet blood flowed from her eyes. The dead princess looked very creepy. The boy got scared and froze in place. He started crowing again, distracting the living dead man. He tried to do at least something, but the only thought was that he had to run away. He ran as fast as he could towards the door. His sister begged He-shan not to run away, but Shi-han ran faster and faster and asked the dead man's girl to leave him alone. Xiaowan laughed heartily. He-shan screamed with all his heart. He left his sister and ran away. The girl realized that they were separated in order to break them one by one. She decided it was a great move. The danger was just beginning. But the girl still decided that she had to find her brother He-shan as quickly as possible. The evil laughter around them grew louder and louder. Beads of sweat ran down my sister's face. She started calling her brother and looking for him all over the area. She ran towards the door. The girl opened the door and kept calling him. She was very scared. The girl was more worried about her brother. When she entered the room, someone's funeral was taking place there. She couldn't understand what was happening. There were candles burning on the table. It was dark and creepy around. There was some kind of bridal chamber in front of her, she exclaimed, reassuring herself that she was not afraid. It's all a conspiracy of that boss. There are no ghosts. That's how the girl instructed herself. She won't be scared. The girl closed her eyes, sweat pouring out, but she tried to calm herself down. The main character, looking at the monitor, realized that he made the beauty cry. This is not what he really wanted. Strangely, the haunted house only has a few rooms. The sister couldn't understand why her brother couldn't hear her when she called him. The girl began to call him louder and louder. She began to feel around. Then I heard someone's footsteps, as if someone had entered the room. The girl asked who or what it was. She became very tense. Something scared her. Apparently, it was her reflection that scared her. It turns out it was a mirror. The girl looked at herself again, but saw something different there. Tears did not stop flowing from her eyes. She didn't understand why. She wasn't seeing herself in the mirror. She was trying to figure it all out. There really was another girl in the mirror. She was watching her from the side. As a senior in the forensic science department, Gao has dissected many corpses, and the woman's face in the mirror seems very familiar to her. It was a face that only a man engulfed in death could have. There is a real corpse in this adventure house. The girl fell to the floor again. She leaned her hand on the floor, but she still did not lose hope. She began to call her brother. When a person is in a very tense state, his physical senses are transformed to see Xiaowan, and the tension and fear that had arisen earlier disappear instantly. At this moment, there are only words in Gao's head. The girl exclaimed that everything was fine. Fear instantly pierces every part of Gao's body, like a moth to a ray of light in the darkness. The sister started screaming and calling her brother again. Now she was really scared. These screams could be heard in the street. The visitors were also quite frightened. The girl, sitting on the floor, screamed at the woman not to come near her. Beads of sweat kept running down her face. The protagonist contacted Xiaowan. Apparently, he wanted to tell her something. The boy asked the girl to finish. He gave the order to take them out of there. Then Xiaowan leaned over to the girl and asked if she was okay. She explained that the visit was over and asked permission to take them out to rest. The visitors realized that the beauty who entered first was coming out. Xiaowan was leading her out, crying and scared. The main character asked Xiaowan if there was a boy with her. Xiaowan replied that he said he saw a ghost when he looked in the mirror. He was so scared that he fainted and she had to pull him out first. He seemed like a healthy guy, but he left his companion alone. The guy fainted again. If Uncle Shu found out, he would blame him again. The guy was lying on the bench and talking about being a big rooster. Is this adventure house really that scary? People were talking about someone fainting and an ambulance needed to be called. Some girl was so scared that she had to be given CPR because she was running out of oxygen. People couldn't understand what was happening. One of the men asked why he heard that the tourist had fainted. Uncle Shu was the manager of the amusement park. He asked why their project was so scary for people. What if an accident happened? Why not let him worry about it? The main character asked his uncle what he was doing here. He knew that this house was not scary, and the guest was just too timid. The guy, having regained consciousness, began to lament that there was someone in the mirror. Uncle Shu asked him if he was okay. The protagonist asked what mirror and what he saw in that mirror. The guy asked not to drag him out. He exclaimed that there was a ghost in the mirror. This was a mirror in the adventure house, and he was very scared, after which he ran into the room. There was a bronze mirror hanging on the wall in that room. Someone was calling him from it. The main character laughed and exclaimed that it could be a normal heat stroke. Uncle asked why he didn't remember their adventure house having a project involving a mirror. The protagonist laughed and replied that it was probably an ordinary mirror, but he thought about these words. Who could scare him so much with an ordinary mirror? Maybe there's something wrong with him. Yesterday's adventure commission was on a nightmare level. Everything around was glowing red. The mirrors were stained with burgundy and scarlet spots. They were quite unusual. The mirror this student was talking about must have something to do with it. It was quite unusual and interesting. A boy from medical school saw something in a bronze mirror. There was someone in the mirror. It looked like the same thing happened to him. The main character began to approach this mirror. He came a little closer. The boy began to peer at him. He had some kind of mask on his face. When the main character took off his mask, he saw something, and he wondered what it was. So it was there from the beginning. The boy's look changed. That night, the mirror tried to pull him in. There were a lot of red eyes and hands. It felt like someone was watching him from the mirror. If he left it like that, it would only create more problems. That was the moment he separated from his sister. This guy was so scared that he managed to lose his shoe. The main character was watching the video camera recording. At one point, the boy suddenly stopped. He wondered why. It's very strange why he suddenly goes to the mirror. He ran so fast. His reflection is visible in the mirror. Nothing serious, it seems. The boy tried to put all the puzzles together, but then he began to look closely and notice something. What could this be? Why did the reflection disappear immediately? There is definitely something in the mirror, and what the hell is this? The only thing he can do now is to cover all the mirrors in this haunted house. Someone lives inside the mirror. Can another world really exist inside the mirror? It all started with him. This creature appeared behind this phone. So it makes sense that if he wants to beat him, he'll need the help of a phone. The rules of this game seem fair enough. If he wants to expand his haunted house even further and deal with the creature inside the mirror, he needs to figure out how to complete these missions. It seems he's seen this before. New adventure unlocked. The boy discovered this yesterday. And here comes a new task, a new adventure, a murder at midnight. A dangerous psychopath wandered through a ruined house. Modernized scene. In life, they were not husband and wife, but in death, they are buried in the same grave. Come what may, the main character decided, the haunted house finally began to get back on its feet. He can't resist the opportunity to make it even better, so he will use different methods. The boy pressed the button to continue taking risks. He asked if there was any risk on his part. There was a lottery in front of him. He wondered if they had cash. The wheel was activated after collecting the first scream of a visitor. 100 screams in one try is really terrible. The conditions for its activation are already so complicated, but the result is still random. If the result is an ominous ghost, then wouldn't it be a total loss? The boy laughed and exclaimed that this was only if there was an evil ghost there. His phone rang and congratulated the boy on winning a rare special item, the damn love letter. The chance of getting such a letter is 3 out of 1,000. It's just incredible. The main character even shed a tear because he was very lucky to win such a valuable prize. Her eyes were open. Her cheeks were white as ash. Once she fell out of the window, she became taboo at school. With her red dancing shoes and blood-stained school uniform, even her name became something that was only uttered hysterically. People pretended she didn't exist, but after that day, someone started receiving her love letters again. The boy was surprised by such luck, love letters, and a chance of 3 out of 1,000. Even before he solved the issue with the creature in the mirror, he was gifted with another one. He doesn't even know whether he is lucky or unlucky. The main character held a love letter in his hands. He was very surprised. The boy began to open the letter. There was probably some inscription there. When he unfolded the paper, it said that she liked him, and there was a heart drawn on it. The guy began to think about how she liked him. He crumpled the letter and asked to take it back. Then Xiao Wan appeared at the door. She asked the boss what he was doing there. The boy replied that he was doing nothing. He wanted to tell her something. All the mirrors in the house were closed, even those related to the quest. During his speech, he asked the girl to try not to get close to the mirrors. She replied that she understood everything, and she asked if he had already arrived. The main character began to say goodbye to the girl. Xiao Wan couldn't understand why her boss had 2 shadows. It was very strange. Visitors were warned that their park was closing. They were asked to remember their personal belongings and thanked for doing so. A guy asked a girl about Ping An Apartments. He said he had never heard of them and asked if she knew. The girl said she didn't know either. An old man sitting on a bench told the boys that this was a very bad place and that if he were them, he wouldn't go there. They had to go straight ahead and then he would run into it. He lost because of him, what bad luck. The boy wondered what he meant about the bad place. It's strange, but there is nothing around here. Why was this old man here? How tired he was already to walk. There is emptiness all around. How can you live here at all? The boy was happy because he found the cursed house. The test mission should be harder than the daily missions. Today he must be more careful. It is now 1850, and according to the terms of the mission, he must be there by 23. That means he still has time to take a quick look around. When the boy opened the door, he hoped that there was someone else there. The main character noticed some paper with writing on the wall. It said Zhang Qing and a photo of a girl, a woman of 27 years old, 157 centimeters tall, thin, likes to wear red clothes. If anyone has information, please contact Mr. Wang. A monetary reward will be provided. The protagonist decided that this was very strange. And what was going on here? A man approached him and asked what he was doing here. This man looked very strange. The boy said hello and asked if he was the owner. He wanted to ask how much it would cost him to spend the night there. The man asked to show him his ID. As for the payment, he said they would talk about it on the second floor. After which the man led the boy behind him. The protagonist followed him. Judging by the peeling paint, he thinks that this place is at least 20-30 years old. However, this place is not as terrible as he thought. The place is clean, there is no trash, and even the lawn is carefully mown. It seemed that no one lived on the first floor. They continued walking forward. The protagonist noticed that there were people on the second floor too. This was clear from the steps. The boy continued to follow the man. Meanwhile, someone opened the door and watched them. A red eye of some girl appeared in one of the cracks. It was an unpleasant sight. The boy felt a little scared. What was really going on here? The man asked one of the visitors why he was there again and ran after some guy. He exclaimed that he had already said many times that his girlfriend was not here. If he persists, he will have to call the police. The man threw his papers and exclaimed that he was talking to him. Some papers started flying around the corridor. The main character noticed a leaflet. It was the leaflet that was hanging on the wall when he came in. It had a girl on it and information about her. Did she really live here before? But why look for someone only in this building? It seems he comes here very often. The protagonist picked up the leaflet and handed it to the guy. The man asked not to pay attention to him. He told the boy that this man was crazy. The boy took the leaflet and thanked the main character. His name was Wang Qi. The boy looked him in the eye and said that there was nothing to thank him for. The system gave out details that he was holding scissors and a hammer. He was just wandering outside his apartment. It is necessary to find the culprit of the murder and survive until dawn. The boy thought that perhaps this guy was that person. The man asked him to get out of here and not to see him again. He told the protagonist that one night would cost him 50 yuan. He handed him the keys and said that he could choose any apartment on this floor. But why should he stay on the second floor? Or the apartments on the first or third floors are not available. The man replied that he had too many questions. The apartment was simply in poor condition. The protagonist thought that in a regular residential building where apartments are rented out, the reception desk is usually located at the front door. But in this place, the reception desk is not only on the second floor, but also at the very end of the corridor. Anyway, first he needs to leave his things. A hole like that isn't worth 50,000 yuan. There was a sound. Someone coughed. He was told to keep his mouth closed. The protagonist realized that this was most likely the owner's voice. Is there really someone else living with him? The boy stopped and began to listen. But the sound suddenly stopped. Someone's hand appeared from somewhere. The protagonist froze in place. Someone put a hand on his shoulder. It was that madman. He gave the young man advice to leave here while he could, not to try to spend the night here. The boy asked why, since he lived here too. The guy replied that everyone here knew that murders had taken place in this building in the past. The protagonist asked the guy if there had been a murder here. The guy replied that yes. The boy decided that he looked like an NPC in the game who gives him an additional task. Then, why didn't he leave and stay here? The main character decided to get to the bottom of the truth. The guy replied that his fiancée rented an apartment here and then disappeared without a trace. After she went missing, he immediately called the police. The police officer said that her phone signal was coming from this house, but the police said she wasn't there. But he's sure she's still here. The guy showed his fiancée on the flyer. Something must have happened to her and she is in danger now. He explained that his wife had been kidnapped by people who lived here. I asked him why he said that. Then the guy asked him to look. She was the one who sent him the message. The messages said, "Save me a bunch of times." The guy, holding the phone to his ear, exclaimed that he would definitely find her. He swore to the girl. Why can't she pick up the phone? He kept saying he would definitely find her. The main character noticed that he loved his bride very much, but he never asked him if he had seen her. This man is certainly an interesting character, but he finds it difficult to say whether he is crazy or not. Someone exclaimed about fresh blood. It was a girl. She told the protagonist not to believe him. The boy turned towards her. It was some girl who suddenly opened the door who spoke. He immediately jumped away from her. The protagonist decided that it was a ghost. But the girl laughed and said that she was an ordinary person. She has been here for 9 months, but she has not seen even a trace of ghosts. There are no ghosts in this world. The protagonist exclaimed that she was clearly one of those people. What an outfit. The girl replied that it was already late and he had better return to his apartment. She decided to tell him one last thing and asked him not to go to the 3rd floor. The protagonist was very surprised. So many people told him about the 3rd floor. He thinks it's worth taking a look at this place. The boy decided to go back to his room first and get ready. He headed towards the door. This is a ghostly place. He decided to see what would happen next. The main character looked into the phone and saw the correspondence of the guy who got scared on the quest. It was He Sheng, the one who had been on his quest during the day, who reminded him that he was in a haunted house now, so he should turn on the live broadcast. If an accident happens, viewers can call the police. Viewers have already watched and asked if it was real. The live video could be a solid proof and he could watch the adventure later. The boy thought it was a good way. It could also increase the popularity of the adventure house. He asked him not to forget to call the police if anything happened. He is in Ping An's apartment. He Sheng asked him not to worry because he would call the police immediately. The protagonist considered himself a genius. He greeted his friends and exclaimed that a live adventure was about to begin. They would spend the night in a haunted house tonight. He started reading the correspondence. The viewers were already giving him a lot of likes and were scared, but for now they were only joking. The protagonist shouted to grab their amulets and charms and warned the audience that they were starting. The boy took the physical amulet of the bull. If he cannot guarantee his safety in the house, he can make a small trap on the door to prevent strangers from entering the house. It was necessary to take a thread and attach it to the door with tape. If someone enters the room, the thread will break and he will know about it. The audience called him a moron and thought that it wouldn't save him. They would rather punch him for it. It is located in Ping An Apartments. Some people probably don't even know about this place. This house is far from the road, and it is full of ghosts. It is somewhere in the mountains. The boy spent a lot of money and effort to get here. Thanks to the Siders for sending 10 ghostly souls, the house does look creepy. Someone wrote that his mother told him stories about this horrible place. The boy laughed and noted that the number of viewers had exceeded 5,000. He would become famous. He looked up information on the internet about this house. 5 years ago, a family of 4 burned to death in a fire in this building. At the time, the 1st and 3rd floors were rented out, and during the fire, everyone managed to get out, except for the family that lived on the 3rd floor. The police investigation proved that the family had been burned by someone, but that's not all. When he got here, he discovered even stranger things happening here. The boy suddenly stopped. He couldn't tell if it was the guy or the owner behind the door. The protagonist became wary. Suddenly, the door creaked. Most of the 1st and 2nd floors were restored, but the most interesting thing is that the 3rd floor was left in the same condition as 4 years ago. These people are hopeless. It looks like he'll have to look for other clues before he can come to any conclusion. The protagonist told his dear friends that the landlord had warned them that the 3rd floor was a restricted area and they were not allowed to enter. It was dark, and he didn't know if they would be able to see anything. All the walls are burnt, and the air is filled with a burning smell that can be easily felt. The windows are boarded up. This has nothing in common with his adventure house, the boy walked on. He can't stand these haters anymore. He decided to continue their investigation. He stumbled upon some startling discoveries. Every resident of the house is somehow connected to him, and he suspects that the killer has been hiding among them for years. A strange old man who was playing checkers on a bench showed him the way to this house. And the guy who rented him the room was a man with strange legs, about 40 years old. He was the first suspect. The protagonist wrote to his friends what they thought about it. They decided that the place was preserved in the same condition as 4 years ago, and it was disgusting. The old man may be incapacitated now, But that doesn't mean he was the same 4 years ago. The protagonist laughed and said that they would figure it all out for him now. It's been many years. Even if there was evidence, it wouldn't have survived for so long. Here the boy stopped. He heard some sound nearby. What is this anyway? A doll appeared next to him and grabbed his leg. What is this doll doing here? A haunted house and a child are a perfect combo. Perhaps this doll is the daughter of the former owner of the house. It was the 3rd floor that burned down. The boy couldn't understand how this doll survived. He became even more interested. After all, there was a big fire in this house. He took the doll in his hands and thought that he liked it. If she said to take it with him, then he would take it. After all, this doll is very cute. Then the main character heard some sound again. Those were someone's footsteps. Someone was definitely coming here. The man was telling the girl that they had to take this thing away soon. They couldn't put it off any longer. The new tenant was already going up to the 3rd floor. The girl said that it was good that she had managed to stop him, and he didn't suspect anything. The man was upset and surprised. He exclaimed that this was very bad. They asked the old man if everything was okay. The man asked the girl to tell everyone to be ready. Today, they would dig him up and bury him in the hills. The main character became curious about what they were going to dig. He began to follow this couple. The boy wrote to the guys that there would be interesting content soon, and he watched the girl go. She asked if they really had to do this. They were already standing near the grave. The man said that if they dug it up, their fingerprints would be on it, and it would be incredibly difficult to explain. He thinks they should call the police. The man wanted to stretch out his hand towards the other man, but the other man grabbed him and asked if he really thought it would be easy to explain anything now. Or maybe he's just too eager to die. If they involve the police, they'll be prime suspects. His escape from the scene of the car accident and the illegal theft of the old man's property will be easy to uncover. None of them had a clear conscience, and it was not easy for them to find a comfortable lair. If any of them dared to do something, they had better be careful. The girl asked them to calm down. Since they are all in the same boat, instead of arguing with each other, it is better for them to act together. The man asked the other to stop complaining and get to work. The other was indignant and asked why he had to act first. But he was asked to hurry up and do it immediately. He began to pull off some white veil. The man told him to dig her up and get out of there as quickly as possible. There was a girl's body in the wall. The protagonist saw that it was hidden inside the wall and that it was what they were going to dig up. The sight was quite creepy. The dead girl was wedged into the wall. Apparently, she had been killed and walled up there. The main character asked to call the police quickly, but they wrote to him who he was. The boy was angry with Haeshan. He promised to show him who he was the next time he came to the adventure house. The audience asked him to turn on the flashlight. They could not see anything that was happening there. The body was hidden inside the wall, and that's what they're trying to dig out. Meanwhile, the man was urging the other one to push a little harder. He got on the nerves of the second man with his commands. He was already working, and here he was standing. The girl agreed with him and said that they had shoved her into the wall so that the police wouldn't find anything. The man exclaimed that she was about to fall out of the wall and asked to grab her hand. He felt very scared and unpleasant. The protagonist thought it was no wonder he said not to go up to the 3rd floor. It's good that he can broadcast it. The man asked the fat man to go faster. He replied that he was already going fast. The protagonist said that these thugs had obviously killed their old owner of the house and hidden his body somewhere here, or they carry this body to the body of the owner of the house. Suddenly, the phone flew out of the boy's hands. Someone called him, and he said that they saw his video and it has a lot of potential. They are wondering if he wants to collaborate with them. They can contact the best streamers on their platform to promote it to increase its popularity. It's very difficult to do this alone, so most streamers online rely on a team and cooperation. This is a very good suggestion, and what does he think about it? The boy finally picked up the phone and exclaimed that he wasn't interested. Of course, he attracted the attention of the others. The guys wondered what kind of guy he was. They all turned their heads in his direction. The main character decided that he was done for now. Beads of sweat were running down his hands. He was thinking about what to do next in this situation. The fat man asked who he was. The man gave him an angry look. The main character laughed and asked the boys if they couldn't sleep either. His smile was quite frightened. Then something sharp flew towards him. It flew at an incredible speed. It was a sharp-bladed weapon that was stuck into the wall next to the boy's head. It was very close to the main character's head. He was just lucky. The man exclaimed that they must not let him go. They took up arms and asked the boy to come to them. The chase for the main character began. He told them that they may not believe him, but he just went out to pee. The guys shouted at him that he wouldn't run away from them. The main character asked him to leave him alone. They were wailing that they must not let him go. He must have seen them moving the body. The boy decided that the difficulty of this test mission was too high. Should he hide here in the forest until dawn? The main character managed to run into the forest and hide among the trees and bushes. He parted the bush a little and looked ahead. There was some house in front of him. Most likely it was a rest home for foresters. He went to the door and tried to open it. The protagonist decided to wait here until Sean called the police. The boy pushed the door with his hand. He asked if there was anyone there, after which he began to go inside. He noticed clothes on the couch and dirt stuck to them. This dirt had not yet dried, which meant that they had been worn recently. These clothes probably belonged to the woman embedded in the wall. He picked up one of the girl's things. Suddenly a phone rang, but this time it was definitely not his. The protagonist turned his head to the side in search of the phone. He came closer. Then he reached for the phone. The messages said, "Save me many times." She sends a message every night. It's always just 2 words, namely, "Save me." Could this be Wang Chi's fiancé's phone? The man who sent Wang Chi letters every night is his wife's murderer. He appears quite often in the immediate vicinity of Ping An's apartment, which means his actual place of residence must be very close to the apartment. In that case, this wooden house must probably be Wang Chi's house. The unfortunate man who wanders around every day looking for his missing fiancée is probably the real killer. While the main character was thinking about this, looking at the phone, someone appeared at the door. It was a man with an axe in his hands. He told the boy that he was sorry that he had seen all this. Behind him was Wang Chi. He immediately said that his bride was somewhere in this house. He didn't lie to him at all, did he? The protagonist exclaimed that it was most likely he who killed her. He killed his bride, but the guy replied that he had done nothing wrong. But he was right. It was he who had walled her up in the wall. Wang Chi began to remember how he took her body and hid it in the wall. She was already dead. The protagonist asked why he did it. He looked into the eyes, waiting for an answer. Wang Chi replied that it was all her fault and she had made a mistake. She wanted to leave him. So what could he do to keep her? She was perfect, like a beautiful flower. Everyone wanted to be with her, but she was his fiancée. He was pathetic compared to her, just a nobody. The boy loved her very much and could do nothing about it, but he did not want her to go to anyone else. Even though she was his, he was worried in his soul. She wanted to leave him, to abandon him. The guy said that was exactly why he did it. He made sure that she was always with him. Was near and only his because he loves her. The protagonist realized that he was crazy and there was no point in arguing with him. He had to attack first to have a chance. Wang Chi exclaimed that he didn't want to do this. Does the boy understand him? He was moaning again that he didn't want to do it. The guy headed towards the main character. But the boy sent him away and hit him in the face with all his might with his hammer. Streams of scarlet blood spurted from his mouth. The guy started asking why he hit him. He's a good man after all. The protagonist picked up the hammer and replied that it might be good, but Wang Chi had long since become rotten. After which he brought the hammer down on his head. The guy was left lying on the floor. The protagonist called him a psycho and went outside. Wang Chi was left lying bleeding. Meanwhile, it was night outside. Police cars were already racing down the road. The officer shone his flashlight and asked who had called the police. There were 2 people. The protagonist replied that it was him. He found the body on the 3rd floor and was able to catch the killer. And here, in front of us, is a huge police station. Many people were on the street. The boy knocked on the door. He was asked to come in. The officer introduced himself to Chen. He explained that he was Captain Li and was handling his case. Chen Gay asked the captain if he had caught the man. The man replied that the police had not been sitting idle. Not only Wang Chi had been caught, but also other residents of the house, some of whom were wanted. They saved the owner of the house and the body he was talking about. The main character was happy. It was great. The captain said that the fake landlord Zhang Peng has escaped. He is the most bloodthirsty and evil of all. There is a lot of blood on his hands. He is afraid that he will come back to him to take revenge. The captain warned the boy that he must be very careful. That man would obviously take revenge on him. Chenga asked the captain not to worry. He must have had some kind of plan. The boy exclaimed that if he decided to attack him, he would personally let him get away, after which he would drag him to the police station. In front of us is a small, neat house. It's morning, 8 o'clock, 9 minutes. The room of the main character. Chenge. The guy was thinking about how he was almost killed last night. The captain said that this Dayden could come back for him, so he slept without even taking off his clothes. I wonder what reward he got for this mission. The mission of the Midnight Assassination Trial was successfully completed. A new scenario was unlocked. Chenge realized that he had completed the mission quite well. Then he noticed something. The system congratulated him on discovering the hidden element of this mission. The missing persons notice from Wang Ti. He had already sealed her in the wall, but she seemed to have crept into his heart. Isn't that why Wang Ti ran to find his bride? The world of madmen is too complex to understand. Missing person notice from Wang Ti. The kid thought his phone was broken. It seemed more like a curse than a reward. While the boy was standing with the phone, someone suddenly entered his room. The girl called the boss. It was Xiao Wan. He asked her what happened. The girl exclaimed that he was on TV. She was very excited. Chenge immediately turned his head towards her. The boy turned on the news channel. It was breaking news. They said that justice always wins, and yesterday the police detained a group of criminals. 4 years ago, there was a fire in which a family of 4 died in an apartment. Thanks to the help of a good citizen, law enforcement agencies were able to detain the real criminal, who will now answer for his crimes. Since one of the criminals is still on the run, the good citizen's identity cannot be revealed for the time being to ensure his safety. Xiao Wan asked the boss if he was the man, and she said that this was the first time that someone she knew in real life appeared on television. The main character replied that it was him and she could worship him now. The boy picked up the phone because he received some kind of signal. Murder at midnight. The scene layout is ready. This scenario is complete. The system asked not to forget to go up to the 3rd floor to see. He was wondering when the scenario was created and if he could move them. The boy found himself on the 3rd floor of a ghost house. Why did it look so much like Ping An's apartment? The whole 3rd floor is so clean it seems he saved a lot on repairs. This place was alive and filled with anxiety and pain. There are over 10 traps, and many rooms are connected to each other via hidden passages. He will earn a lot of money. There are also some nasty hidden gems. Chenge told Xiao Wan that the equipment has been updated, a new stage has been added, and customers will be installing it tomorrow. The girl immediately started jumping and screaming that it was really cool. She was happy. People started lining up for tickets. The protagonist noticed that the number of guests was growing and the rating had also increased significantly. If this continues, he will be able to expand the adventure house in a few days. Many people wanted to get into the haunted house. The system reported that he had completed a normal mission. The boy received a reward for the mission, namely, the uniform of Dr. Skullcrusher. In front of him was a bloody robe. Skullcrusher uniform. Clark worked in a mental hospital for over 20 years. Constant contact with mentally ill patients slowly warped his outlook on life. One day, he decided to end it all once and for all. He believed that the source of madness had leaked into the brains of his patients, so the only solution was to split their skulls. The timing is just perfect. If the protagonist combines it with the midnight murder scenario, if he does that, it will be a great combo. Chenge pressed his finger on the bloody cloak in his inventory. The boy's phone rang. It was Heishan. He said that yesterday was very interesting. Chenge thanked him for calling the police. Thanks to him, nothing happened. The boy invited him when he had time. Heisheng asked if that beauty Gao Jie was with him. Chenge said no, there was a small problem with that. The seniors in the faculty formed a team to avenge Gao Jie's sister. The boy said that he couldn't talk anymore and turned off the phone. He didn't expect this kid to be so interesting. The main character was walking along the road when suddenly someone's hand reached out to his shoulder. Some guy put his hand on him and told the boss he needed 3 tickets. A lot of people surrounded him. One of them said he heard his haunted house was pretty good. If he couldn't scare them, they asked for their money back. Chenge realized that these were the ones who would help him experience a new scene. He decided to see if they could laugh afterwards. And so the boy greeted everyone. He exclaimed that his haunted house would satisfy them. Chenge put a mask on his face and wished everyone a good time. He was very serious and smiled a little creepily. When one of the guys started to open the door, he was very scared, but curiosity was above all. The boys looked in fear at what was behind the door. Beads of sweat were running down their faces. They found themselves in a huge long corridor. What kind of corridor could this be? Perhaps a wedding scene? This is probably a different scenario. Why don't they do the wedding scene? The second guy said he didn't know, but it was definitely a new scene. The fat guy said it didn't matter if it was a new scene or not, he wasn't afraid of anything. The script is called Midnight Murder. The main character asked not to take any pictures. Otherwise, the violators will be personally responsible for the possible consequences. The exit is hidden within the scenario, and the game lasts 20 minutes. To surrender, you simply need to go to the camera and shout for help. The boys were asked to enjoy the script. One of them laughed and said that he had shit his pants. Soon this decrepit place would be destroyed. It's time to try out the props that Chen Ge got for completing the mission. He thinks they'll like it very much. In the end, he also wants to enjoy himself. Chen Ge was wearing the costume of Dr. Skullcrusher. He laughed and exclaimed that this hammer was really heavy. The boy decided to start the game. The boys were already excited. They became alert and heard some sound. They looked at the monitor screen. There was a video camera attached to the wall above. You could see these three guys who were still very self-confident, but now they were already scared. The main character coughed, then laughed evilly. He was wearing a creepy, scary mask. The boys got scared and started running away. They asked who this guy was running after them with a hammer in his hand. They started running away as fast as they could. The boy had a terrible bloody hammer in the shape of a skull in his hands. He asked the boys if they were afraid and why they were running away. The boy told the boss that they were being haunted by a ghost doll, so there was a real ghost in their house. The boys were shouting that they were very scared. The boy began to take off the mask from his face and lowered his head down. There was a doll lying on the floor, which the main character had picked up in the previous scenario. The guys were pointing at it. Chen Ge realized that this was the doll he had found in Ping An's apartment. It seemed to be waving at him. The boy was very surprised. He wondered what she was doing here. Suddenly, his phone beeped. The system began to congratulate the main character. The ghost's favorite, the system congratulated on the launch of the only hidden mission in the murder scenario at midnight. The spirits still had unfinished business in the mortal world. It was necessary to help them fulfill their desire, and they would become useful allies. The boy asked the doll what her name was. This doll must have some grudges in Ping An's apartment. If the arsonist Zhang Peng is brought to justice and punished as he deserves, then his wish should be fulfilled. The boy asked the boss when he said this. The doll's eyes seemed to shine. Xiao Xiao's ghost doll. Slightly good impression. The system reported that he had attracted attention and seemed to be a little closer to her. Another page opened. It was the scarlet ghost of Zhang Ya. She is different from her. She likes him, but she likes him dead even more. The protagonist thought that if he remembered correctly, it was she who sent him a love letter. He received a notification. The more affection, the more orders they will carry out. It turns out that these ghosts can be on his team. Chen Ge told Xiao Xiao that this is her new home from now on. He asked her to be careful so that he doesn't step on her. The guy said that it seems their boss is sick. He is now talking to a doll and it is creepy. He told the boss that 2 more people came with him. I wonder what happened to them. Chen Ge asked him to tell him why they got separated and where it happened. Someone was shouting at him to get out. The protagonist became alert and asked what was going on. The guy replied that it was Brother Lo's voice. Chen Ge thought it was very strange. Why did this guy climb into the attic? Taking his bloody hammer, he said that he would go and have a look. The guy asked the boss to wait and not leave him here alone. The main character began to move higher and higher into the attic. The voice kept asking not to come near it. The boy asked the boss why Brother Luo was acting like that. He kept shouting that he would kill him if he came near him, and he exclaimed that he was not afraid. When the guys entered the room, the guy was sitting on the floor with a chair in his hands. Beads of sweat were running down his face. He broke the glass with this very wooden chair. Chen Ge asked him what happened. Did he encounter something strange? The guy replied that there was something in the mirror. It wanted to enter his body, after which it wanted to take his soul. The protagonist immediately approached the mirror. He cast a curious glance at it. His face was reflected in the broken mirror. But so far, I haven't seen anything strange about it. The guy told the boss that Brother Lo had caused him trouble. The protagonist replied that there was no need to pay for the mirror and the game was over. He started to lead them outside. The boys took Brother Lo and asked if he could go, but the guy kept wailing about the mirror, saying that something was clearly wrong with it. The system congratulated the boy. The current state awaits expansion. Each expansion will bring him a mysterious reward. And after 3 expansions, the haunted house will be upgraded to a horror maze. Chen Ge asked if he could get the expansion already. I wonder how much it will cost. But first he has to deal with that inexplicable situation in the mirror. It seems he is somehow getting attached to people. If nothing is done about it, it will have a bad effect on his business. The boy began to think about what to do. He went outside and saw Captain Lee not far from the building. The protagonist asked him what he was doing there. The captain replied that he was looking for him. Zhang Peng may have infiltrated this amusement park. It seems he is looking for an opportunity to take revenge on him, and now they are trying to find him. The captain explained that Chen Gei is in a dangerous situation and advised him to hide somewhere. The boy replied that if he dared to enter his ghost house, he would not be able to return. Pan's sudden appearance isn't that bad for him. He can be used to take away the monster in the mirror, or the monster will kill him anyway, which is good for him. The captain warned the protagonist of the danger and began to return to his police car. Chen Gei watched him go. Xiao Wan asked the boss what the police wanted from him. The protagonist did not explain, but asked the girl to close the ghost house for today. He said she could go home right away. There would be guests in the evening and he needed to get ready. The girl wondered what kind of guest he was that the boss needed to meet him personally. She was very interested. Meanwhile, midnight came. The protagonist was in the video surveillance room. He was sitting on a chair in his bloody robe. On the camera, he saw a man approaching the house. He was holding a huge sharp knife. Chen Gei was glad that he had finally arrived. He told Captain Lee that Peng had arrived. He would play with him first, so he asked the captain not to rush. After his careful preparation, Zhang Peng's route was drawn up. The other rooms in the house were locked. Zhang Peng approaches the desired room step by step. He had to see with his own eyes how the monster in the mirror entered this man's body. Chen Gei was looking forward to it. The boy laughed a sarcastic laugh, after which he decided that he was a bad guy after all. Pan couldn't understand why the doors to this house were locked. He decided that when he killed him, this would be a good place to hide the body. He thinks they can find him only in 10 days. Destroyed their hideout in Ping An Apartments. Sent Huan Er to prison. This man was very angry at the protagonist. He peered into the darkness and began to shout that he would kill Chen Gei. His eyes were very angry and full of hatred. He kept wailing that he would kill him. The man approached the guy and pulled out a knife and began to attack him, but he jabbed the knife into the void. His eyes were bloodshot. The man couldn't understand how the boy could disappear. Pan began to look around. He tried to figure out where this guy had disappeared to. The main character was behind him. The man began to frantically think where he could have gone. How could a person just vanish into thin air? Beads of sweat were running down his face. Chen Gei was already outside the door, holding his hammer at the ready. Peng thought he was a ghost. Meanwhile, the hammer flew towards the man. The protagonist raised it above Pan's head. He exclaimed that the man had guessed wrong, and he raised the hammer as high as he could to make the blow more powerful. Chen Gei said that his suit really didn't look like a human's. He apologized and said that he wouldn't hit him on the head anymore. The man was already lying on the floor and thinking why this guy was so cruel. He was even worse than him, just a crazy killer. Chen Gei said that he was so brave to come to his haunted house alone. He continued to stand in the room with the bloody hammer on his back. Peng asked him not to come closer and called him crazy. The protagonist asked him not to be afraid and said that he would not hurt him. He promises not to miss this time, so he asks him to be quiet and not move. The man exclaimed that the moment they met, he broke his arm. Why does he then say that he will not hurt him? The protagonist laughed evilly. The man climbed into another room and decided that the boy had set up an ambush. He did not want to leave so quickly. Chen Gei laughed again. After all, there was a real ghost in this room. Pan was already standing in the middle of the room in front of a huge mirror. He saw something in it. What the hell could this be? The man realized that it was some kind of ghost. He began to scream in horror. Pan fell to the floor and asked the protagonist for help. But the mirror began to pull him in. The man screamed that he did not want to die. Then someone asked the boy if he was injured, and Chen Gei was already standing outside the door. The police approached him. The guys were asking where Zhang Peng was. They had their guns ready. The protagonist responded to Captain Lee that he was inside the room. He warned the police that the man was running away. Pan found a small window and squeezed himself into it. He really was trying to escape. The captain, without lowering his weapon, told the protagonist that he could leave the rest to them. The boy immediately agreed. Whatever happened, Zhang Peng was no longer the same as before. The man ran along the road, shrouded in some kind of black, gloomy haze. Chen Gei returned to the room where Peng had escaped. He noticed that the ghost in the mirror had left with Zhang Peng. The number 2 was written on the mirror. Perhaps the ghost left this sign. Could the number be connected to his life? He believes that now he just has to wait. Xiao Xiao's ghost doll, the only ghost that listens to him, she only knows how to be cute. In a real combat situation, he will probably have to protect her. He looked at the photo on his phone. Accepting Zhang Ya's favor was a dangerous task. Now the only thing that can help him is the mission of the bloody heart of the Scarlet Ghost Zhang Ya. She must be a very strong ghost. She must be stronger than the ghost in the mirror. The boy decided that if he could subdue her and she would protect him, then he would definitely be safe. The protagonist, after the system asked if he was sure he was accepting Zhang Ya's task, pressed the confirm button, and then a signal came to the phone. Some red bloody shoes appeared in front of him. The boy wondered what kind of red shoes these were. Anderson's Tales Volume 1 Red Dancing Shoes. Once upon a time, there was a pair of red shoes. They could make a dancer light and able to perform dances perfectly. None of the dancers dared to wear them because they were a pair of magic shoes that made the dancer continue to dance until they died of exhaustion. You must arrive at the West Jiujiang Private Academy within an hour and find Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes before dawn. You can't be late for the first date, otherwise she will be very offended. The main character was surprised why his first date with a girl would be in an abandoned school after midnight. Was he really that unlucky in love? It was late evening in a suburban area. A guy stopped a taxi and asked to take him to the West Jiujiang Private Academy. When he won the love letter, there was a description. At the moment of her death, she was wearing a bloody school uniform and red dancing shoes. Could the fairy tale be true? It seems that the key to today's mission is the red dancing shoes. The driver decided to ask the young man a question and asked for permission to do so. Why did he go to West Jiujiang Private Academy so late at night? This place is mostly abandoned and far from residential areas. The protagonist replied that he was going on a date. The driver asked who dresses like that on a date. Even guys should know how to dress for a date these days. Chengi replied that he didn't know how to explain it. The girl was a bit hard to please and had some strange quirks. The driver told the protagonist that they had arrived. He wished him luck and that the date would go well. He received a message telling him to call the police, as if he was being held hostage. When the driver left, he calmed himself down and said that it was just a date and everything was fine. Chenge was surprised that he left so quickly. How could he trust ordinary people? He had better get acquainted with the school's structure first. The boy went forward. He can't believe he's already here. He was in the West Jiujiang Private Academy. He managed to reach the place on time. Now his mission is to find Zhang Ya's red shoes. The most likely places where he can find red dancing shoes are the women's locker room. It is located in the dance studio or Zhang Ya's former bedroom. He needs to focus on these two places. The boy began to open the door and found himself in the corridor. There was an ordinary chair in the middle of the corridor. Is there any special meaning here? Perhaps someone is already waiting for him here. There is no need to get worked up for no reason. After all, Zhang Ya, the red ghost, is a scary creature in this school. He has her love letter, so he asks who can dare to challenge him. Suddenly the chair moves. The protagonist couldn't understand what just happened. He squeezed his bloody hammer in his hands and began to reassure himself that everything was fine. The main task of the day is to find that pair of red dancing shoes. As long as these strange things do not bother him in any way, he has no reason to interact with them. The protagonist decided to explore other places first. He read the sign "Do Not Enter," and he thought why it was closed here. He didn't have time to look for another exit. Chengu raised his hammer as high as he could and struck the wood, causing the boards to shatter into small pieces. The boy finally broke the door. He began to look inside. It was dark and very hard to see. He asked if there was anyone there. There were only shadows around. He began to enter the room and saw statues in front of him. The boy thought that these were just statues and there was nothing to be afraid of. But this studio seemed pretty creepy to him. It didn't compare to his haunted house. Above the door was a sign that said dance class. It was a very good omen. The protagonist decided that it was a great success. He was able to find this place so quickly. He hopes that he can find dancing shoes here. Chenga opened the door slightly and looked inside. There was an empty room in front of him, and in the middle of the room there were 3 chairs. He asked why there were already 3 chairs here. There's still someone's name visible on this one. It was written Qian Yujiao. It was clearly a girl's name. He hoped he wouldn't run into her in the future. Someone laughed evilly and said hello to him. There was a light shadow of a girl around the chairs. She flew up and touched the chairs. The protagonist was confident and held the hammer tightly. He asked not to think that he was afraid. The easiest place to find these shoes is in a dance class. If he doesn't go forward, then he's just a coward. There are many photos and diplomas on the wall. The boy decided to see if there were any clues. There were 5 girls in the photo in front of him. Why is one of them blurred out? 4 girls, 4 chairs. If each of them represents a girl, then what really happened to them? So, the girl who was sketched may be the one. It's probably Zhang Yai. Suddenly, one of the chairs creaked. It wobbled and began to fly up. The boy was already heading for the exit, but the chair continued to make noise. He asked if they really thought he didn't have the guts to break them into pieces, and he headed back toward the chairs. Without letting go of his hammer, he came close to them. Chen Ge said that nothing could stop him now. He came closer and closer. The chair continued to move, squirming back and forth across the floor. The ghosts were sitting on chairs. There were several girls on them. They asked not to do this. One of them started screaming and saying that she was in pain. Streams of blood were running from her eyes. It was as if she was tied to a chair and wrapped in barbed wire. Her arms and legs were wrapped around it. Chen Ge couldn't understand why the ghost was making such a noise. He came closer, holding the hammer in his hands. He wondered if it was because he had just told Zhang Ya. If so, it was not good. They seemed to be very sensitive to this name. The chairs kept shifting back and forth. The protagonist stood before them. He asked why they dared to stand in his way. The boy laughed and asked if they thought he was really afraid of them. Suddenly, the ghost's hands reached out to the boy. The girls began to approach him. The protagonist noticed that the passage was blocked by a chair. He had no way out. The hammer fell from his hands. The bloody hammer seemed to be looking at him from the side. He didn't understand what these girls were doing. Chen Ge seemed to see his soul in front of him. They gathered around him. The boy felt very ill. He started calling that girl Zhang Ya. It was as if his stomach had turned inside out. The guy stood on his feet, slightly swaying. It was as if a multitude of mirror fragments had stuck into him. These fragments fell on the floor. The boy coughed. There were a few drops of his blood around. He sat down a little and started coughing again. The main character felt very bad. He kept coughing. The boy's eyes started to change color. It was as if the blood vessels in his eyes had burst. He couldn't understand what was going on, but he understood only one thing. They were very scared. Approaching the mirror, he grabbed it with one hand. What was happening behind him? The protagonist looked ahead. He continued to cough convulsively. One of the girls appeared behind him. She put her arm around his shoulders, and he extended his hand forward. The boy realized that he was in a mirror. Next to him was a girl named Zhang Ya. He felt the ghost lean against his back. Goosebumps ran down his body. The picture in the mirror changed. Aren't these the girls who were trapped inside the chairs? But now they looked like people. They were having fun and talking to each other. They were smiling while running around the room. Could it be that Zhang Ya was behind them? The girls were talking about eating ice cream. One of them exclaimed that she liked sweets the most. The other said that she hated them. Chen Ge realized that Zhang wanted to show him what really happened. The dancing girl was alone and beautiful. They continued to do their business. Zhang Ya tried to make friends with other girls. She offered them candy, but they refused and decided to leave. For some reason, they did not accept her and avoided her. She stood with a sad face, clutching her fist with candies. A letter fell out of the girl's bag. It landed right on the floor somewhere to the side. Someone picked up this letter from the floor. What was written in it? The girls suddenly started arguing. Why did they suddenly quarrel? A man entered the room. I wonder who he is. He called Zhang Ya into the office. He must be her teacher. After that, Zhang Ya ran out of the office. Holding her hand, the man chased after her, cursing all the way. All 5 girls in the dance studio saw this, but they all sat in place. None of them wanted to help Zhang Ya, but why? The man said a lot of unpleasant things as he approached Zhang Ya. I wonder what kind of man he was. Zhang Ya's hands rose to the edge of the window behind her. She ran to that open window. There was only one way out for her. The girl climbed onto the edge of the window and then fell out of it. The girl saw everything that had just happened. The man was shocked by what was happening. Zhang Ya was flying down from a high floor. She screamed a terrible scream as she flew. The protagonist saw the whole picture. He understood what had happened. This man had encouraged her to commit suicide. The other girls didn't say a word either. Once she fell out of the window, she became taboo at school. Wearing red dancing shoes and a bloody school uniform, no one even mentioned her name. Chen Ge exclaimed that he now knew her story. The boy said that he was not leaving, he just wanted to help her. The girl looked down sadly. There was a laugh from behind him. It was Zhang Ping? Was he really chasing him? The man asked him if he was surprised to see him, and he said that he was too careless. Now he will definitely pay for this. The man took out his huge shiny knife. But there was a ghost behind him. The man realized that he had now arrived. The ghost girl was behind him. She began to approach faster and faster. The man cried out, in some kind of horror, "There was a ghost behind him. There is a ghost from the mirror in his body." The protagonist asked why he was afraid of his ghost then. The ghost girl's gaze was very creepy. A blood-red light haze came out of her eyes. The man asked her not to come closer. Sweat was running down his face. The protagonist saw the ghost flying away. He asked Zhang Ya to wait for him. The boy called Captain Li. He explained that he was at the West Zhujiang Private Academy and that Zhang Peng was there. The captain asked him what he was doing in this place at such a time and if he was okay. Chen Ge replied that everything was fine. In addition, he found another murder case in the West Zhujiang Private Academy. 4 years ago, a student named Zhang Ya jumped from a building, but her death was more than suicide. She was forced to do it. The captain asked if he was sure of what he was saying. Chen Ge replied that they would talk about it later, but for now, they needed to catch Zhang Ping. The ghost girl returned and pointed her finger to the side. The protagonist realized that he needed to go there. In front of him was a door with the sign inventory. What does this girl want? He began to open the door. It was colder there than outside. Zhang Ya brought him here, so there is something important here. The boy glanced at some chest. There was a pile of dancing shoes underneath him. These shoes were hidden under the floorboards. The protagonist realized that one of them belonged to Zhang Ya. He came closer. Chen Ge asked the girl not to worry. He promised to sort out everything that happened here. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his haunted house. The system reported that he had managed to find Zhang Ya's red dancing shoes before dawn. The mission completion rate is 50%. Zhang Ya's affection level has increased. Her favor has increased. He can write some request for her to fulfill. Chen Ge realized that he could complete part of the mission. Today's experience may have been painful, but at least the result was good. His demand must not be against Zhang Ya's will. This is the only condition. Zhang Ya is a scarlet ghost. She is different from her. She likes him more dead. The protagonist hoped that the girl named Zhang Ya would listen to him forever. Zhang Ya will listen to him forever. Of course, that's what the protagonist wanted to think. But the system said that it was a pity. His wish was against Zhang Ya's will. The system asked the boy to change it. Chen Ge took the phone in his hands. He hoped that Zhang Ya would protect him from danger. The system again reported that his wish was against the girl's will and asked him to change it. Chen Ge hoped that Zhang Ya would not harm him and had no intention of killing him. He asked the system if it was feasible. The system responded that his wish was against the girl's will and asked him to change it. The boy couldn't understand why. He even felt a little offended and decided to deal with it later. But now he needed to find Zhang Ping. The boy was congratulated for completing the mission of the Bloody Heart of the Red Ghost. This mission is part of the side mission for the 4-star scenario of the Afterlife School. Fear Factor. Afterlife. School. 4 stars. The 1-star scene scared the medical students to tears. I wonder how scary the 4-star scene will be. A 1-star scenario may be open to everyone, but entry into scenarios that had 3 stars or higher should be restricted to everyone except those who survive the 1-star and 2-star scenarios. This means that they will have a new experience every time, and this will definitely increase the popularity of his haunted house. This makes the protagonist feel like he is some kind of dungeon master. Suddenly, the policeman's phone rang. Captain Li asked the boy where he was. He told him that they were there. Chen Ge told the captain that he would tell him everything now. The man who worked there was to blame for Zhang Ya's death. He may not have killed only her. He found a large number of shoes in the room and thinks he was collecting them. The captain asked why there was always a murder where he was. Then he asked him to relax because he didn't suspect him, so he could continue telling the story. One of the policemen reported to Captain Li that they could not find Zhang Peng, but a driver on the road said that he saw a strange man. The captain exclaimed that this guy had escaped from them again. He told Chen Ge that it was time to go home. That idiot wouldn't go far. He would circle around him like a shark, so he advised the boy to be careful. He said that Chen Ge must stay at home, and that was an order. The protagonist promised to stay at home and go nowhere else. It was already quite light and he was very tired. When he had enough money, maybe he should rent himself an apartment. The boy decided to study the reward better in order to make the most of this chance. The system produced Zhang Ya, the Scarlet Ghost. He is different from her, she likes him, but she likes him dead better. He could ask Zhang Ya for a favor since he had completed her Bloody Heart mission, but wouldn't it be too much of a loss if he asked her to destroy the mirror monster for him? The protagonist remembered that he forgot to close the window when he left. Perhaps he was too tired. Chen Ge heard a sound. The fugitive Peng appeared in the doorway. A huge, sharp dagger was shining in his hands. The man exclaimed, looking angrily at the boy, that today he would certainly die. Chen Ge was surprised that the man found him so quickly. When he swung his knife at the boy, the protagonist skillfully dodged it. He told the man that he was very brave to come back here for him. The man exclaimed that he would get him even if he died. Chen Ge said that he was not going to die with him and decided to attack the enemy. He raised his bloody hammer and tried to hit the man. He tried to dodge and parried the blow, but the protagonist was surprised that the man could still stand, because the second blow hit him on the head. Streams of scarlet blood were flowing from Peng's head. The boy realized that there was a mirror monster behind him and that it was protecting Zheng Peng. Chen Ge grabbed his phone, realizing that he couldn't handle these two. He needed to call for help. The protagonist looked at the monster that hid behind the man. It was a huge black shadow. An evil shadow emerged from behind him and headed towards Chen Ge. The boy fell to the floor. He didn't know how to deal with this ghost. Chen Ge pressed his face to the floor. The man raised his dagger and began to approach the boy. He exclaimed that he would kill him now. The protagonist's eyes changed. He decided that his death hour had come. He tried to press the phone's touchscreen. His fingers landed on Zhang Ya's photo. Everything around lit up with bright scarlet colors. These rays of bright light mixed with the black ghost. They enveloped the protagonist too. He tried to understand what was happening. A ghost girl appeared in front of him. It was Zhang Ya. She flew up as high as she could. The girl began to fight with the dark, creepy ghost. Pan exclaimed that the ghost had appeared again. He was very scared and decided to run away. But it was not to be. The main character's huge bloody hammer appeared above his head again. The boy exclaimed that the man could not escape from him. He came closer to Pan, and raising his weapon, he hit him on the head with all his might. The man flew to the side. The protagonist sent him flying. Chen Ge asked him to sleep for a while. The man began to scream in pain. Suddenly, the black ghost flew into pieces. The boy looked to the side and asked Zhang Ya to stop immediately. The ghost girl began to eat the second ghost piece by piece. She ate these pieces, smacking her lips appetizingly. The girl's cheeks were literally bursting. Apparently, she really liked this ghost. Chen Ge realized that she had just eaten half of the mirror monster like that. The girl sprayed the other half of the monster right into his eyes. The boy began to rub his eyes with his fist. He was in pain. He couldn't understand what was happening. His eyes hurt a lot. Why now? When he wiped his eyes and opened them, he noticed that there was no one around him. The mirror monster had been taken care of, so there would be no new issue tonight. The boy called Captain Li and told him that Zhang Peng was here and he was unconscious, so he couldn't escape. They were in his haunted house now. The captain began to shout that he was always in the most danger. He exclaimed that they would come right away and asked if everything was all right with him. Chen Ge replied that it was finally over and he could rest. The murder case was finally closed. The mirror monster had been eaten by Zhang Ya. So there are no more hidden threats in his haunted house, which means he can finally open all the scenarios to the general public tomorrow morning. What he should focus on next is expanding the haunted house, because new scenarios cannot be unlocked without the expansion. After he wakes up, he must talk to Uncle Shu. He must persuade him by any means necessary to let him rent the underground parking lot. The boy was resting when Zhao Wan called him. He told the girl that she could rest this morning, and asked to come in the afternoon. Zhao Wan told the boss that there were a lot of people down here, even the police and reporters. She asked what he did. Chen Ge immediately looked out the window and wondered why there were so many people here. The girl asked him to give up while he still could. The boy exclaimed that he had done nothing. He asked her to wait for him and promised to come down. The door to the park opened. The visitors exclaimed that it was the owner of the house. Chen Ge welcomed everyone to his ghost house. He asked if any of the visitors could explain what was going on here. There was a police officer in the crowd. He asked to let him through. And he asked if he was Chen Ge. The man explained that he had been looking for him for a long time. The boy asked who he was. The man replied that he was Captain Yan. He was a classmate of old Li from Jiujiang. In fact, he had talked about him a lot. Chen Ge noticed that this man in uniform was very strange. He wondered what he wanted from him. He hoped that he would not get into trouble. The policeman told the protagonist that he now had to make an announcement to the media. He would be given a reward for providing important evidence in the Ping An apartment murder case, namely the third-level Public Security Medal of Honor. He hopes that Chen Ge will appreciate this honor and continue to contribute to maintaining and improving the public security of the society. Everyone congratulated the boy on receiving such an honorable award. Chen Ge thanked him. The man explained that he personally needed to go to the city's main bureau to receive the award. He can now go and receive the reward. Chen Ge thanked Officer Yan from the bottom of his heart. He is very happy to receive it. The policeman asked to take some photos. Xiao Wan approached the main character and asked the boss if he would be on TV again. An old man saw him and congratulated him on receiving a medal. It was the amusement park manager Uncle Shu. Chen Ge asked what news there was about the underground parking lease. He said that the money would come soon, but the man replied that it was not about the money. He can't sit back and watch him dig his own grave. The number of visitors is steadily falling and everyone is trying to run. How he doesn't understand it. Chen Ge replied that he understood and knew what he was doing. Uncle said that since he would not back down, he would not repeat it again. He had already arranged to rent an underground parking lot, but he has one condition. He needs to succeed within 3 months, because a new amusement park will soon be built nearby. He had never seen a free rental agreement before. He had stamped the document, so the agreement would be valid until the park closed, so he could use it and not let him down. From now on, he should be very busy, so he will not detain him any longer. The boy thanked him and promised to make this park famous. In front of us is an underground parking lot. Chen Ge exclaimed that it takes up a third of the park's area, and it's just wonderful. I wonder how many scenes he can fit in here. The system reported that he had reached the criteria to enable the first expansion of the haunted house. He needed to find a suitable location as soon as possible. The guy couldn't find any instructions, so it seemed like he would have to slowly explore it on his own. Why couldn't he put Zhang Ya and Xiao Xiao into the ghost house? There must be other conditions. The system asked if he was sure he wanted to place the entrance here, and asked him to choose the direction of expansion. The protagonist saw a virtual representation of reality in front of him. He was quite surprised by this. That was really cool. The grid on the phone matches the parking lot. Just drag and drop to activate this place. The system congratulated on the completion of its first expansion, received a special reward, unique instruction, midnight cash register broken. Now he can attract special visitors, they are different from the rest, and can lend him a helping hand. The boy wondered what it meant to attract special visitors, ghosts or tourists. Maybe it meant he could recruit members of a haunted house. Xiao Wan appeared and told the boss that there were buns downstairs. She smiled sweetly at the boy. Chen Ge told the girl that he would come soon. She asked what the boss did in the underground parking lot. The boy laughed and replied that from now on, it was their territory. He was there to connect it to the house. Now they need more new equipment. He pointed at it and said that this was their new cash register. The girl exclaimed that he was simply the best boss. Their haunted house could use some new equipment. Xiao Wan said that it was all about him and he was famous now. She showed him the phone and exclaimed that they would soon be in all the headlines. The protagonist replied that it would be just perfect. The boy felt that the midnight cashier effect had worked. Even if the chance was 1 in 1,000, Xiao Wan asked if he had lost anything. Based on his previous experience, nothing good can come of this. But it's still a day and he doesn't think a ghost or some monster will appear. He heard a woman telling a child that she really can't help him. Chen Ge immediately turned to the woman. She greeted him and asked the boy for 2 tickets. The main character was very surprised when he saw a child in front of him. A very unexpected turn. He didn't expect that the special visitor would be a child. The little one was very strange and cast a piercing glance at Chen Ge. The boy's mother asked the boss again if they could have 2 tickets. The main character apologized and replied that their haunted house had an age restriction. No one under 14 was allowed in. The child's mother asked for an exception. Chen Ge asked why they insisted on visiting the haunted house. There were many scary things there, and it could cause a lot of trauma. He told the boy that he shouldn't go to such places for now. The mother explained that Fang Yu was different from most children. He did not like to talk, so she hoped that he would not be offended by his behavior. Chen Ge replied that everything was fine, and he would allow them to pass, but only with him. They were not married in life, but when they die, they will be buried in the same grave. The theme of this scene is a wedding. The protagonist asked Fang Yu what he was doing. His eyes were full of surprise. The mother also looked towards the boy. She immediately called him. The woman ran up to the boy who was leaning into the well and asked him what he was doing. The mother explained that it was dangerous there. Xiao Wan approached her and asked her why she let the child in. The woman started screaming that it was a ghost, but the male lead asked her not to worry, because he was just an actor. Xiao Wan noticed that this child was very cute and exclaimed that she liked him. Chen Ge explained that this child was special. He is not afraid of their haunted house at all. His mother explained that Fang Yu is a little different from boys his age. After the tragedy that befell his parents a few years ago, he became like this. They had seen many doctors, but it didn't help. The girl was surprised that the woman wasn't his mother. She replied that she was his aunt. Fang Yu's parents were teachers at Muyan Middle School. They disappeared one day and have not been found since. The boy was only 5 years old at the time. She did not know how to explain it to him, so she could only say that his parents had left. She said that they were in a faraway place called Paradise. The mother thanked the children and said that they were going home. Xiao Wan said that this boy was very interesting. He was not afraid of her and made her look for something. She asked him what he was looking for. When the girl asked the boy, he replied that he was looking for paradise. Suddenly, the main character received a notification. Different choices lead to different results. The first special visitor left. He made the right choice during the visit. The system congratulated him on receiving the award. This mission is a test of Muyan Middle School. Chen Ge decided that the previous mission required him to find the killer, and this mission required him to survive until dawn. On one hand, it looks simpler, but the black phone must have its own reasons to give this mission a 2-star rating. The boy decided not to let these two get away. He needs to gather more information. He noticed that the aunt and the child were getting into a taxi. The main character immediately ran to the side of the road and began to stop a taxi. Getting into the car, he asked the taxi driver to follow the bus that was driving in front of them. The driver immediately agreed. The boy was the key that launched the mission for Muyan Middle School. So he could be the key to solving the problem. The boy kept following the aunt with the child. When the taxi driver dropped him off at the appointed place, he followed them and started knocking on the door of the apartment where the two lived. His aunt opened the door. Chen Ge greeted her and asked if she still remembered him. He is the owner of the haunted house in the amusement park, and his name is Chen Ge. The woman wondered why he was there. Or maybe they had caused some damage when they visited the haunted house. The boy thought about how he couldn't tell her he was here on a mission. He said that wasn't it. He was simply interested in the little boy's situation and had questions for him. Perhaps he could help him. He's a really good guy. He once helped the police solve a murder case and was awarded a Medal of Honor. The woman replied that she thought she had heard something similar on the news today. The boy said that it was about him. Then the woman began to invite the boy in. She asked what exactly he wanted to know. The woman offered Chen Ge some water. He said there was no need. He just wanted to ask a few questions about the boy's parents. She replied that 3 years ago, Muyan Middle School was an ordinary school. When the parents returned home, the boy was nowhere to be found. They went looking for him, but in the end, only the boy returned. The boy thought that it sounded like the reason for the parents' disappearance was also related to the boy. The last place they were seen was unknown, but their bodies are most likely trapped in the well of Muyan Middle School. Probably because he witnessed the whole process, Fang Yu became like this. Still, it is unclear what happened and who was the culprit of all this. Chen Ge asked if Fang Yu was the only child. Did he have a brother or sister? After this question, the woman changed. She was very upset and began to explain to the boy, if her children hadn't had an accident, Fang Yu would have had a brother and sister to play with. The boy apologized and said he didn't mean to upset her, but she still had Fang Yu. The woman said that she just wanted Fang Yu to be an ordinary child and grow up happily. Chen Ge asked where Fang Yu was found when his parents went to look for him. The aunt replied that Muyan Middle School was where he was hiding in her brother's office. Before it was closed, the police had to visit it almost every day because of the constant fighting. The school is haunted. According to old-timers, it was originally a crematorium, but it was torn down due to the city's redevelopment. She advised her brother not to look for work there, but he simply refused to listen to her. He was passing by a class drunk and was invited to take a photo. After taking the photo, the students left and he himself was not clear who ultimately took the photo. In the photo, he was sitting in a sealed classroom. Chen Ge held the photo in his hands. He wondered if she had called the police. Why are all the students turning their backs? It feels like a reflection in a mirror. The woman replied that although the students in the photo were wearing the uniform of Muyang Middle School, they could not be found in the school. They opened the sealed classroom and looked carefully. All they found was traces that her brother was indeed in this room. Chen Gei sensed Fang Yu nearby. The boy opened the door and appeared on the threshold. His aunt asked him if they had disturbed him. She explained to the child that this was the boss from the amusement park. He came to visit them. Does the boy remember him? Then the boy took something out of his pocket and handed it to the main character. It was some kind of paper package. Chen Ge asked the boy if it was for him and asked what was inside. The envelope contained a drawing on a black background. It had red people drawn on it. The aunt explained that the boy's favorite pastime was drawing. He doesn't like to go out and often secludes himself in his room. He likes to be alone and draw. She wants him to grow up happy like a normal boy. The protagonist said that everything was fine. He would contact the doctor as soon as he could and they would find a solution. When the boy came out, he thought that both the aunt and the child were problematic in their own way. The question was, who was more problematic? A closed classroom, dead people, and a strange photograph. He tried to put the puzzles together in his head. The red people probably don't represent his parents. There were too many of them in the picture. The picture is too dirty. What did the boy really mean? This picture is the key to the riddle. The main character's phone rang. He asked. Sean, what happened? The guy asked the boss to quickly open the video sharing app. He explained that someone was encroaching on his feeding trough. Chen Gei was surprised that someone else had appeared and was opening a new haunted house. He Shang replied that when he saw how many views their live broadcast had, he decided to plagiarize it. Qin Guang's team was live broadcasting from Ping An's apartment. Chen Ge asked him not to worry, some things can't be copied. He asked if the boy was familiar with child psychology. He had some questions for him. Does he still remember his eldest, whom he scared so much that she cried? Her father is a psychologist and a full-time professor of criminal psychology. He will ask if the girl can help him today. The guy asked the boss if he really didn't care about Qin Guang. Chen Gei replied that everything was fine. Let him broadcast. He will also be streaming today so that Chen Gei will not forget to come and watch. He Shang told the boss that he will not sleep all night and will watch. Muyang Middle School mission conditions. Arrive at the mission site before 23 tonight and survive until dawn. The boy thought that it was time to go back and prepare. The Muyang Middle School mission was opening. Chen Ge found Muyang Middle School. He noticed that it was difficult to get to. It's a scary place. Even taxi drivers didn't want to go there. It started raining again and it was difficult to find a car to get here. The driver even threw away the mat he was sitting on and quickly drove away, and the rain continued to pour down like buckets. The boy remembered that the woman said that there used to be a crematorium here. Is it really that bad here? There are 4 side missions in Muyang Middle School, namely the Pen Spirit, the 5th toilet stall, the deep well, and the sealed classroom. If he wanted to fully unlock the scenario, he couldn't skip any of them. Any of the side missions could rival the nightmare mission in creepiness. He must complete all 4 in one night. It is not yet midnight and he must scout these places. If the difficulty is too high, and he will still have time to leave. At the end of the corridor, there is a classroom that is always closed. So the classroom may be the center of the paranormal phenomena in Muyang Middle School. The boy suddenly turned his head towards the door. 5 students once broke into Muyang Middle School. They wanted to play a game of Spirit of the Pen for a bet in their senior year. He looked in and wondered if they could have left a pen and paper. There was a phrase written on it. When will I die and who will die next? He knows that school children like to play such games. Since he needs to complete all 4 missions in Muyang Middle School, he can start with this one. The protagonist decided to start a live broadcast. He immediately turned on the camera. He is currently at Muyang Middle School. This place used to be a crematorium, so the place is full of burn marks. On the table in the room full of burn marks, there are sheets of paper and a pen. It seems that someone played the game Spirit of the Pen here, and he will try to play this game too. The boy began to speak, the spirit of the pen, from a past life, and said that he was her spirit in this life. He asked if the pen was with him, to draw a circle on the paper. The boy began to repeat this phrase several times in a row. Could it be that the spirit of the pen refused to answer his call? Why does it seem to him that several people have joined him in this room now? Sweat began to trickle down the boy's face. It was as if the hands of a shadow were reaching out towards him. They seemed to help draw a circle on paper. The main character could not understand what it was, whether they had really come. They actually drew that circle with him. It seemed like he heard his voice. It was time to ask some questions. Chen-ge began to ask the spirit of the pen if he knew where his parents were. As the boy drew a circle on the paper, he heard a crunching sound. It's strange, but it seems that his parents' disappearance is more complicated than it seems. It seems he doesn't know the answer to his question. Well, he'll just ask a random question to end this side mission. Chen-ge began to repeat the phrase about the spirit of the pen. He asked if the spirit of the pen could tell him who his future wife would be. The shadow's hands began to push the pen and move it across the paper. Some kind of writing appeared. The protagonist's eyes widened. Could it really be Xiao? Maybe it was Xiao Wan. He still couldn't understand what was going on. She stopped and started cracking. The handle started breaking into small pieces. Chen-ge was very surprised. The pen crumbled into small pieces. After that, some light appeared in the room. Bright yellow and red colors mixed. A ghost girl appeared in front of him. Could it be Zhang Ya? But when the boy looked at the handle, it suddenly continued to move. The main character looked at what was happening with surprise. It was clearly some kind of witchcraft. This game was really real. On the paper, the inscription Zhang Ya appeared, and the name Xiao was crossed out. The boy realized that the pen had crossed out the previous inscription and written Zhang Ya. He asked the spirit of the pen if it was sure that he had intended to write this name all along. He asked if the spirit of the pen could hear him now to draw a circle. Chen-ge picked up the phone. His popularity grew. The broadcast had 20,000 views. This is a completely new record. The boy thanked for the support. He explained that it was a game of the spirit of the pen and asked not to try to repeat it at home, after which he decided to go to the next place. There are 3 side missions left: a sealed classroom, a deep well, and the 5th toilet cubicle. The next mission will be the 5th toilet cubicle. There are 3 hours left until midnight. 1 hour for each mission should be enough. Suddenly, the main character's phone rang. He wondered whose phone number it was. He answered the phone and asked who it was. They greeted him and asked if he knew Gao Jie. The man said that he was her father. He explained that Chen-ge had come across a strange boy who he suspected was suffering from a psychological problem. He asked for more information about the boy. Chen-ge replied that he didn't think he would contact him so soon. It is true that he is physically healthy, but it seems that he lives in another world. He refuses to interact with other people and is afraid of sunlight. He met this boy at the entrance of the haunted house. He liked to play there, and he had no fear at all, like other people. He felt more comfortable in the dark than in the sunlight. He felt that the dark corners gave him a sense of security. The boy even showed interest in the actor who was wearing the makeup of a dead man. The man replied that he could assume that this could be a sign of bipolar disorder, which is very destructive. When he is angry, he is very aggressive, but he retreats into his own world. His personal opinion is that since the boy's relationship changes are related to haunted houses, then the source of his problem must be related to the haunted house. Chen-ge thought that the biggest difference between his haunted house and other houses was that his house actually had a ghost in it. Fang Yu likes to visit haunted houses. The protagonist combined events into a single whole. If he likes visiting haunted houses, then he likes being in the company of ghosts. The boy suddenly remembered the drawing that the boy had given him. It was a small roll of paper with a picture of a black house and red men on it. Before arriving at Muyan Middle School, he assumed that it referred to one of the school buildings. But none of the buildings matched the drawing. If Fang Yu really draws the house he lives in and these red men, then Fang Yu's house is most likely haunted. If someone had the intention of harming Fang Yu's parents, the protagonist paused in thought. Why did the killer, with the ability to perfectly hide the bodies and remove all traces from the crime scene, let Fang Yu go? Unless the killer hadn't noticed the boy, or wasn't the boy himself, Chen-ge imagined a bloody picture in front of him. Suddenly, the man on the phone asked him if he was still there. It turned out they hadn't disconnected. The boy apologized to Dr. Gao and said he was still there. The doctor said that he had just read the information too. He was interested in the patient he had told about, and he asked if the boy could bring him to him. Chen-ge replied that it was fine. He would keep his number and if possible, he would bring him to him. The protagonist saw that he was there. This must be the location of the 5th toilet cabin mission. He thought that perhaps an unpleasant surprise was waiting for him behind the door in front of him. The boy had a very bad feeling, but he went to the door and started pulling on the handle. The protagonist opened the door and shone a flashlight inside. His eyes widened as he saw what was in front of him. When he went into the toilet, all the walls were covered in drawings. There were big eyes drawn on them. Chenga wondered why there were so many eyes on the walls. There wasn't even a single piece of space without these eyes. Chenga wondered why there were so many eyes on the walls. What kind of psychopath did this and why? It looks scary, but they are just drawings. The boy noticed that one eye was different from the others. When he shone the flashlights, he saw that it was a peephole into another booth. All the other eyes were just a distraction. It was to hide that one peephole. Someone had once been in booth number 6 spying on the person in booth number 5. Now that he had discovered the secret of the 5th booth, he was thinking about how to complete the mission. Should he stay in the 5th booth so that someone would come to spy on him? If it came to that, he wouldn't mind giving that pervert a black eye. But he thinks it's better to meet him head-on. Raising his hammer up, the main character decided that the best defense is an attack. He decided to wait in ambush for this pervert, and he remained sitting in the 6th toilet cubicle. The boy suddenly felt someone's footsteps. Surely someone was coming here. They are right next to him. Isn't the order broken? Chen-Ge began to peer through the peephole. According to the mission description, he should be in booth number 5. Shouldn't it be someone horrible? Where did these kids come from? If his opponents are these two, he will feel like an evil person. Another side mission related to the well mentions a brother and sister. Since the well has a connection with Fang Yu, could these children be the aunt's son and daughter? But why did they appear here? The strangest thing for the boy was that they looked as if something was chasing them. There really was some kind of ghost in front of them. The children sat on the floor and huddled together and began to cry. Chen-Ge realized that it was finally here. There was a red shadow in front of him. He decided it was time to start. The boy broke down the wall with his hammer. He exclaimed to the red shadow that he would be her opponent. The protagonist clenched his teeth and rushed forward. Everything around began to shine with a bright yellow light. He began to attack the red evil shadow. The shadow fell to the ground and began to cough. Chen-Ge knocked it down with his huge bloody hammer. Then she rose to her feet and, growling loudly, began to run away through the door. The boy wondered if this creature had forgotten its ghostly essence. He watched the shadows run away. Behind him, children began to cry. He remembered that they were in a toilet stall. The boy turned to them and asked them to stop crying. He asked why they were acting like victims, but the children continued to cry and cling to each other. Chen-Ge asked if he had frightened them. Suddenly, the children started running away and shouting that a monster was coming. The main character asked where they were running. He asked them to stop and not to run away. He just wanted to ask them something. Do they know a boy named Fang Yu? But the boy held the girl's hand and ran away without stopping. Chen-Ge noticed that they had disappeared in an instant. Where could they have hidden? The boy approached the teacher's room, and he thought that they had brought him here on purpose. In front of him was Fang Yu's briefcase. He guessed because it contained letters with red men on them. This meant that the boy had started drawing ghosts at an early age. It was quite possible that this office belonged to the boy's father. He was a math teacher at Muyuan Middle School. Fang Yu's aunt said that his father was fired from another school for drinking, and other schools refused to hire him. What mistake did the boy's father actually make? I wonder what kind of person Fang Yu's father was. The protagonist approached one of the tables and moved the cabinet. There were a lot of letters in the table, so he was writing something down. It said that they knew what teacher Fang was doing in the 6th stall of the women's restroom on the 3rd floor, and they demanded that he apologize to the girl immediately. It seems that the protagonist was right, and Fang Yu's aunt was hiding something important from him. He remembered the booth with many eyes drawn on it. So Fang Yu's father was the one doing the peeping. There were 3 notes in total, but the handwriting on all 3 was different. This means that at least 3 people knew about the math teacher's dirty secret. The handwriting on the paper was very clear. Teacher Fan probably saved these notes in order to find the students responsible. Comparing the handwriting and judging from the contents of these notes, they were written by students. Could it be that they were the ones who threw the teacher into the well? He must have missed something. An open apology was out of the question. If such a fact becomes known to the public, his life will be ruined. To sum it up, the students who learned about the teacher's secret were unable to achieve what they wanted and eventually got rid of him. The notes mentioned a girl for whom they were demanding an apology. If he could find her, many issues would be resolved, but where could he find this girl? It's 22:30 already. He doesn't have much time to complete the 2 remaining missions. If he keeps this up, he won't succeed. Additional mission closed class. The class had a strong yin energy, which is why the director kept it closed. Some employees moved the class further if the performance was worse. But the director refused to do this, so as not to make divisions. The main character told his friends that now they will learn the whole truth about this place. And now they were inside the legendary closed classroom. Chen-Ge asked if they could see everything clearly. It's no different from other classes, only a little quieter. It seems like something is carved into the table. Chen-Ge approached the table surface and noticed that the writing on it seemed to be left by Teacher Fang's victim. The eyes in the toilet had traumatized her greatly. Combined with other actions of Teacher Fan, all this pushed the poor girl to ask for help from this damn class. Suddenly, the pen flew off the table. The protagonist immediately glanced in that direction. Beads of sweat were running down his face. He was very interested. Some hand from under the table returned the pen to its place. The boy smiled and thanked the stranger for giving him the pen, but then he wondered where this hand came from. The main character felt as if he had been struck by electricity. After that, he decided to calm himself down. He began to think that it was just a glitch, but then the boy picked up his huge bloody hammer and asked who was there. He asked the stranger to show himself. The classroom that no one ever entered was crowded at midnight, but it was empty. It was now almost 12 o'clock. In the classroom, shadows of students were sitting at the desks on each chair. They seemed to be studying at this hour. The shadows looked ahead as if they were waiting for midnight. The protagonist decided that this side mission was impossible. He decided to leave. The rumors seemed to be true. An entire class turned into ghosts and remained tied to this place. As the boy began to leave, someone called out to him. They called him by name. The boy paused. Was it a ghost calling him? He was completely covered in sweat. Meanwhile, lightning continued to flash outside. The rain poured down in buckets. Someone called the boy's name again. He couldn't figure out who the man in the cloak was. It was Fang Yu's aunt. She said that she didn't think he would actually come to this place. She was here to save him. The protagonist was very surprised to see Fang Yu's aunt there. He asked what it meant to save him. The aunt explained that she saw Fang Yu's drawing and it depicted him. The people in the boy's drawings were always red. This is the first time she sees him add a black man. She thought about it for a long time and came to the conclusion that this figure must be him. Because he is the only outsider who has visited their home in the past month, Chen-Ge asked why the other figures were red then. What is the difference between the red and black figures? Aunt answered that the red figures represent ghosts. The black figure she thought represented a living person. Chen-Ge once again imagined the picture in front of him. He thought that this woman did know that Fang Yu could see ghosts. Even before that unfortunate incident with Fang Yu's parents, she already knew that the boy could see things that normal people could not see. She told his parents about it, but they didn't believe in ghosts. One day, her husband and children got into a car accident. It was the darkest period of her life. She fainted every time she saw their photos. When this happened again, Fang Yu approached her with his drawing. He handed it to his aunt. It showed two little red children living in a black house. Aunt said that he explained to her that the red children were his brother and sister. Chen-Ge replied that even if her words were true, a child's drawing still didn't prove anything. Auntie said that she knew he wouldn't believe her easily. You need to turn the picture over and look at it from the other side. According to legends, there is an old well in this school that has already taken many lives. There are ghosts coming out of the well, and he is standing right next to it, which clearly indicates that he has become a target for the ghosts. If he stayed here, anything could happen. The woman asked him to trust her. She claimed she was telling the truth. The protagonist replied that it seemed he had misunderstood her. Since she was about to leave, he suggested going together. This way, they can cover each other if something happens. The boy headed towards the exit. He exclaimed that this place gave him goosebumps. Suddenly, the boy's gaze changed. The woman pulled a huge sharp knife from her bosom and exclaimed that he must die. The protagonist said that he knew she wasn't that simple. He took out his huge hammer. The boy swung the hammer and hit the aunt. She flew far to the floor. He had suspected her ever since he had visited her house. Now she had shown her true face. The drawing on the back of the paper was her own. He asked if she really thought a child's drawing could be so easily faked. After all, she was the one who killed Fang Yu's parents. The woman exclaimed that she had no intention of killing anyone. He had no idea what really happened that night. The real killer was Fang Yu's father. Chen-Ge thought that it was true, but he could tell one thing for sure. She was one of the murderers. Why would she put all the blame on a dead man? Could this really be her argument? The aunt replied that her brother was a bad man and he drove an innocent girl crazy. She heard that the girl eventually committed suicide. After this happened, her older brother became even more nervous and paranoid, often saying that someone had found him out. Her sister-in-law couldn't take it anymore and filed for divorce, but her brother simply wouldn't let her go. Backed into a corner, she threatened her brother that if he didn't agree to a divorce, she would expose him to the whole world. The boy asked how her brother had reacted to this. The aunt replied that he had been thinking about it all day before agreeing to her demands. He had only been thinking about how to carry out the murder. He locked Fang Yu in his study and returned home alone. Then he tricked her daughter-in-law into looking for him together. When she returned home, none of them had returned yet. She was worried and went to Mu Yan's school herself to find them. There is an old well on the hill. A landslide occurred in a few days and the well was buried. When she arrived there, her brother was digging the well. Then she noticed his wife's body lying next to the well. After she caught him, he left her with only two options. Then she realized that her brother had gone mad. He gave her a choice. Either she helps him hide the body or she dies herself. The protagonist told the woman that she probably decided to help him and then killed him. The aunt replied that in order to save her life, she simply had no choice but to listen to him. If she hadn't done that, she would have been dead. And after he was killed, she became Fang Yu's only relative. She no longer had to share him with anyone else. The woman exclaimed that her children had already taken control of Fang Yu's body. He had long been not only her brother's child, but hers. She loved him and would give him all her love. Chen Ge replied that if she truly loved Fang Yu, she wouldn't do this. Her love only benefits her. It's incredibly selfish. The boy was forced to live with his parents' killer. He couldn't do anything about it. It is not surprising that his mental development was so retarded. She was the one who caused this. The woman bowed her head and began to cry. Suddenly, the boy heard some sound, as if someone appeared nearby. Most likely they were ghosts. Many shadows were hovering around. The woman put her hand to her face and looked out the window. The protagonist asked her to be quiet, after which they quickly began to run away from there. She asked if he saw what she saw. Chen Ge replied that he had been in the school grounds for so long, but they had not attacked him. It seemed that they were not evil spirits. The people who sent the warning to Fang Yu's father were spirits. They were only trying to protect the students of this school. And then came the late night. It was 1:30, and the main character and the woman went out into the street. The boy heard the policeman's voice. He said that he heard Chen Ge's voice and asked if he was there. The protagonist replied that everything was fine. The suspect had already been detained. The policeman exclaimed that it was him again, the same person calling the hotline 3 times in a week. This is the first such case in the 35-year history of their police station. Even the officer who answers the calls already feels that he will now be able to recognize his voice. Chen Ge replied that he was simply cooperating with the police as a decent citizen to build a good society. She was one of the murderers. The other murderer was already dead. The bodies were dumped in a well, somewhere in the school's backyard. She must know the exact location. He thinks they'll have a better chance of finding out from her. The policeman gave the order to seal the crime scene and to wait for the team with tools to arrive before they started excavating. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the well at Mu Yan Middle School was finally found. At 4:30, the well was completely dug out and 2 bodies were pulled out. And so the main character finally found himself at home. He decided to rest a little. Another tense night passed. The boy decided to see how he accomplished the mission. He managed to get to the place in time, and he was able to survive until dawn. The mission was completed. A new scenario was unlocked. The player can safely control the props from the set. Chen Ge said that this mission was easier than he expected. He should look at all the rewards. The system offered to get acquainted with the internal layout. The protagonist noticed that the size was 2 times bigger than the usual scenario. Just don't let them say that Mu Yan School has moved here. The boy opened the door and walked into the corridor. Wow, this school is as big as Mu Yan School. 4 classrooms, huge long corridors, toilets and offices. But the layout was changed so that all the objects were closer to each other. This class is very similar to the closed class at Mu Yan Middle School. But there are some differences. The boy noticed someone's uniform on the desk. Why is it that only this class has a school uniform? Could the shape symbolize the spirits that linger here? The new scenario of the haunted house has become a new home for Xiao Xiao's family. If we follow the same logic, only a 2-star scenario, and already so complex, if he opens up a few more scenarios, this underground parking lot will definitely become a labyrinth of horrors. The boy decided that he had come to the place where he had played with the spirit of the pen. Suddenly, his phone rang. It seems that because of his questions, this pen broke. The boy asked the spirit of the pen if he was still alive, and if he was alive, he wanted an answer to the question. The cursed ballpoint pen was broken, and the spirit of the pen refused to answer his question. It turned its gaze on him, but then ran away. Chenga told the pen spirit that he knew it held a grudge against him and asked him not to worry as he would fix it. Captain Lee called him. He asked if the kid wasn't too busy to stop by the police station. The killer wanted to talk to him. In front of us again is the police station. The main character headed towards the main entrance. He walked into the cell where the woman was sitting. She was waiting for Chen Gei with her head down. When the boy entered the cell, he asked if she wanted to talk to him. The woman asked if he still had the drawing she had given him. She had done everything she could for Fang Yu in these 3 years. But the first living person who appeared in his drawing turned out to be the main character. Chenga replied that things might not be as simple as she thought. Fang Yu probably thought that he was similar to him. The boy suddenly perked up. He realized that they could see the same thing. The woman was surprised. Could it really be so because the main character is also very unusual? She handed over the drawing and said that this drawing was his gift. The aunt was dressed in handcuffs. The boy asked if that was why she had called him here. The woman bowed her head before answering. She explained that she was Fang Yu's only remaining relative. Now she would have to leave him. The boy had an unusual personality, so he would not be able to make friends. She doesn't ask him to take him in, but she asks him to visit when he has time, to talk to him and make sure the other kids aren't bullying him. Chenga promised the woman that he would do his best to look after the boy. She thanked him and called him a good man. And here we are in Fang Yu's house. The social worker told the protagonist that she wanted to take the boy for a medical examination. Chenga asked Fang Yu not to worry. He promised to visit him often. At this time, the boy was drawing something on paper. The boy noticed that his picture was much different this time and asked where the red men were. Fang Yu replied that they had found a new home. Chen Gei asked if they had left. The social worker said they needed to pick up the child. Chen Gei told the boy they would see each other when he had some free time. The social worker called Mr. Xian kind. There should be more people like him. The boy suddenly began to hand the main character some kind of box. Chen Gei asked him if it was him. When the boy started to leave, the protagonist opened the box. In this box, there was a photograph of my uncle sitting in a closed classroom and many other badges. It contained 24 school name tags with 24 different names. A group photograph of 24 school children standing with their backs turned away from the camera. The protagonist asked Xiao Wan when he found himself on the street what was going on here and who these people were. The girl told the boss that these people were looking for him. They wanted to talk to him about something. The guys explained that they were from Qin Guang's studio. Last night, he used an unusual tactic. They asked him to stop malicious attacks on Qin Guang and make a public apology on his personal page. But if he continues his attacks, it will be worse for him. They will contact the streaming platform to block him. Chen Gei asked why he had to make a public apology. It was not he who used unethical tactics. They know very well how to make noise, but they themselves know very well who is the real unethical plagiarist here. The man said that rashness does no one any good. Why not think about it first? Chenga thought they were persistent. If they weren't here to visit the haunted house, he asked them to step aside. They were blocking the way for real visitors. One of the guys asked him why he thought they weren't there to visit a haunted house. They wanted to experience what they called the scariest haunted house. If he was afraid that they might expose his false advertising, then they wouldn't come. Chen Gei immediately agreed and said that he liked customers who were looking for a thrill. He asked them to come in, but not to forget to sign the liability waiver. The guy said that it was a good setup. The game had started before they even entered. The main character thought that his game would make them cry from fear and laughed evilly. Chenga explained that this was their biggest stage at the moment and they needed to test it out. Xiao Wan asked the boss not to go too far. Something might happen to the guests again. The boy asked her not to worry. He had a sense of proportion. One of the guys told the other that he had a very beautiful coworker and he envied this guy. The second guy replied that this was not their first visit to a haunted house. The atmosphere here is not so bad. Chen Gei began to show the entrance to the house. He opened the hatch in the floor. Since they are experienced guys, he will not waste their time anymore. The guys were a little scared when they saw the underground room. They started going down the steps. The guy said that the stage was in the basement. This guy has interesting ideas. He turned on the camera and decided to make a video about visiting his haunted house and then post an online guide on the internet. The guy asked if it would do any good. His friend told him that similar haunted houses keep the design of the scenarios and the creation of the trap a closely guarded secret. If you publish a video review like this, it will immediately ruin all the attractions. That's why haunted houses prohibit the use of video and photo cameras. They have to maintain an aura of mystery to attract new visitors. Then the guys heard something. One of them told the other that this class was different from the others. There were uniforms laid out on the tables everywhere. The haunted house worker has to hide inside this room, which is why its decorations are different from the others. The boys decided to definitely go into this room. And then the front door creaked. One of the boys turned his head in that direction. Sweat began to run down his face. They noticed that the door opened by itself. There must be some kind of control mechanism. This is the most common mechanism used for filming horror movies. The guy decided to go catch ghosts, but the second one asked his friend if he was okay with waiting for him here. The guy replied that he was okay with it and they would go together. What they promised each other before entering the haunted house. They said they would definitely stick together, but now he's giving up. Where does he think the haunted house workers might be hiding? Maybe they're hiding somewhere in the middle of the school uniform. It's not entirely clear, but that's what they usually do. It doesn't look like anyone is hiding here. There is nothing to be afraid of, actually, but one of the guys called his friend Fei Yuliang. Fei Yuliang asked him what happened and why he was screaming so loudly. The guy replied that he had looked, and there was someone in that box. In that table in front of them, Fei Yuliang decided that he had completely lost his mind. How can a person fit in a desk drawer? The guy said he actually saw a pair of eyes. He tried to convince his friend that he was not lying. He swore on his life that he had seen them. Fei Yuliang looked at the uniform and thought about how he had thrown it on the floor. Why was it now lying on the table? They had been here all along. He asked Zhu Jianying if he had picked up the uniform from the floor and placed it on the table. Zhu Jianying replied that he hadn't even seen the uniform that had fallen to the floor. The boys swallowed convulsively. The form actually appeared on the table by itself. They continued to look in that direction. Zhu Jianying asked if they should continue. Fei Yuliang replied that he was not going to give up. After all, it hadn't even been 5 minutes. Zhu Jianying seemed like a muscle man, but he was acting like a little girl. As they walked forward, the form began to move. It seemed to come to life or to contain a ghost. Why does this corridor seem to have no end? Fei Yuliang replied that they are here to destroy this place, not to promote this haunted house. He asked his friend to pull himself together, because there was nothing to be afraid of. There was some knocking and creaking behind the door. These sounds were getting louder and louder. The boys, dripping with sweat, turned their heads in that direction. Streams of white light came out of the table. The form began to rise higher and higher. It was probably a ghost dressed in uniform. The boys were terrified beyond measure. The boys started running away in immense fear. They screamed without understanding what it was. Zhu Jianying exclaimed that she had been stalking them since that class. They needed to hide somewhere. Fei Yuliang quickly realized and opened the door of another classroom. He suggested hiding there. Before they had time to run in and close the door, they heard a sound. It was as if a shape had crashed into the closed door. What could it possibly be? The boys were trying to catch their breath. Zhu Jianying said that he hadn't seen anything. But it was definitely something in the school uniform. Fei Yuliang asked how big this haunted house was. Why were there so many rooms? This room looked like a dorm. On a piece of paper was written the question of when I would die and who would die next. Zhu Jianying noticed that it was like playing the spirit pen, but something was very strange about it. Is there some hidden mechanism in it? Fei Yuliang asked if he remembered what the owner of the house told them at the very beginning. There are 4 scenarios here at once, and they must visit them all to find the key to the exit. The boys finally started to think, getting rid of the fears in their heads. They had to concentrate. Does this mean they have to play the spirit pen game at least once to get the hint? They began to call the spirit of the pen. The guy said that it was their spirit from a past life. They are her spirit in this life. If this spirit is with them, then they asked to draw a circle on the paper in front of them. The pen actually began to move. It was enveloped in some kind of haze of white light. The boys couldn't figure out which of them had moved the handle to the side. They began to look at each other in amazement. Fei Yuliang exclaimed that it wasn't him. They were wet with sweat. Had the spirit of the pen arrived? They did not let go of it, trying not to give in to fear. Fei Yuliang said that people often think that the spirit of the pen has arrived, but in fact, it is just a psychological effect. So it is all just a hoax. Zhu Jianying replied that if it really was the spirit of the pen, then if they stopped playing and did not send the spirit of the pen away, they would be cursed by it until death. Fei Yuliang decided to just ask a question. He asked the spirit of the pen if it could tell him the name of his future wife. And then the pen started writing something. It wrote to the guy that he would soon die. Fei Yuliang was scared to death. This must be one of the preset patterns of events. No matter what question he asks, the answer will probably be the same. But then they heard some sound again. What is happening? Their looks were full of horror. Zhu Jianying's eyes began to turn red. It was as if a ghost had entered him. Fei Yuliang asked the boy what happened to him. He began to reach out his hand to him, but the friend's whole body began to shake with horror. He exclaimed that there was something behind his back. Some girl appeared. Apparently it was a ghost, not a person. She began to rise above them like a black shadow, her hair fluttering in the wind and her smile fiery. Fei Yuliang had already buried himself. He stood frozen in fear, looking at the ghost woman. Zhu Jianying decided to give up and started to run out of the room. He exclaimed that he could not take it anymore. Fei Yuliang asked him not to run away, but his hand stopped in place. The pen seemed to be stuck to his hand, and he couldn't let go. The boy asked the pen to stop, but it kept writing and writing. The pen wrote a lot of inscriptions. It warned the guy that he would soon die, but Fei Yuliang asked her to stop. He pressed his hand with his other hand. The pen continued to write, after which the guy realized that it seemed like everything was over. He finally caught his breath. Then the boy laughed and thought that he was worried for nothing. But then why did Zhu Jianying react like that? What did he see behind him? Long female hair hung over the guy's head. When he raised his head up, he saw a terrible ghost in front of him. He couldn't understand what it was. The ghost girl's eyes were red inside. The guy started calling for help. He was foaming with fear. His glasses were crooked and his eyes were full of terror. The ghost woman hovered over him and flew closer and closer. Fei Yuliang even slipped on his chair, after which the boy fell to the floor in horror. Light white steam came out of his mouth. Chen Ge exclaimed that he hadn't heard screams for a long time. It seemed like he had underestimated these two. When he entered the room, the tables and chairs were pushed together. They were there and seemed to have bumped into something. Zhu Jianying ran out of the room, screaming, and the main character in a bloody robe asked him what was going on. Judging by where he came from, he was in a female dorm, but there's nothing scary there. Zhu Jianying couldn't come to his senses. He approached the protagonist in a very frightened manner. Chen Ge asked him what he saw in the dormitory. The boy started talking about the school uniform. The main character couldn't understand why he was alone. Where could his friend have gone? Zhu Jianying was shouting about some ghost, but weren't they calm when they went into the script? Why is he going crazy now, like a mad dog? He didn't even have time to scare him. The guy screamed that it wasn't an actor. There are real ghosts in this haunted house. He ran to the women's toilet and shouted that it was definitely a ghost. The guy quickly closed the door behind him. He thought that his friend Fei Yuliang was still in the room, and it was very dangerous there. The ghost was standing right on his shoulders. The guy grabbed his head and moaned that it was all a hoax. He needed to contact the people outside. This haunted house was terrible. Zhu Jianying called Brother Yuan and asked him for help, saying that there were real ghosts in the haunted house. Brother Yuan asked if there were ghosts in a haunted house. The boy replied that he had seen it with his own eyes. It was the ghost of the hanged woman. Her face was crimson and her eyes were bulging. The ghost stood on Fei Yuliang's brother's shoulders. The uncle laughed and asked if the workers had attacked them. He said that they would be coming in now. Zhu Jianying said that there were no workers in this haunted house. It was not workers. It was a real ghost. The man asked what he was talking about, but suddenly there was silence. The boy saw someone's legs under the door of the toilet stall. He decided that a ghost had come here. It was the main character in a blood-red robe. Zhu Jianying was sitting in the women's toilet, crawling towards the wall. He asked not to touch him. The guy was calling for help with tears in his eyes. He lost consciousness, and his friend continued to talk on the phone. He asked if the boy was okay, asked him to say something. The protagonist went to the phone and turned it off. The phone started ringing shortly. Didn't he warn him not to take pictures or videos in the haunted house? Why didn't he listen to him? Chen Ge called Xiaowan and asked the girl to take this body away from here, and he would find another one. The girl immediately obeyed her boss. The boy opened the door without looking inside. That guy ran out of the girl's dorm. So his friend should be here, but where did he go? The protagonist thought and looked ahead at the well. He realized that the path leads to a deep well. The boy began to come closer and closer to the well. Fei Yuliang was already there. His glasses fell into the well. The boy bent down to catch them. He was hanging in the well with one hand. Chen Ge exclaimed that he seemed to have found it. What could have happened to this guy? It seems that he had angered more than just the pen spirit. This guy's condition is similar to what Hai San experienced when he visited his haunted house. It's best to get him out of here first. The uncle started shouting and asking the main character what he did to those guys. They were already sitting unconscious on the bench. How dare he allow his employees to attack customers? The man promised to sue him for sure. Chen Ge asked if anyone saw his employees attacking them. The man replied that they wanted to watch the video from the surveillance cameras to check everything. He thinks that this haunted house is dangerous for guests. Chen Ge replied that they would take 2 witnesses to make sure everything was fair. What happened when they entered the girls' dorm? The boys started looking at the camera. The boys drew circles with a pen. Then the pen began to write inscriptions. It was written there that he would die. What is he doing? What happened there? Is this really a mental disorder? There's no use in this Park's doctor. He needs to call the mental hospital immediately. The camera showed Zhu Jianying running away and Fei Yuliang falling off his chair. Visitors said one of them was scared half to death by his partner, but they noticed that the guy got up again. When the guy stood up, he was like a zombie. They wondered why he looked like a drunk. He seemed to be mumbling something. The man asked to turn up the volume quickly. Maybe this guy was asking for help. He doesn't want to miss any evidence. After this photo, they saw that the guy stopped. The man asked to move the camera closer and turn up the sound. The boy said, on behalf of the woman, that she also considered this classroom their home, but she had a reason to leave. She had to explain herself to Wang Xin. She promised to come back when she finished. This man was probably possessed by the spirit of the pen. The man asked what kind of nonsense this guy was talking. Many ghost hands tried to grab the boy and he asked them to stop. He said again in a woman's voice that she had to go and no one would stop her. He asked her to let her go. After that, the recording stopped. There was some kind of interference and nothing could be seen. The man asked why there was no picture. The audience laughed. They decided that they would now switch to another camera, but nothing of the sort happened. Is he really going to jump into the well? The man asked. To make it louder, Fei Yuliang said that he could understand Chen Yalin's pain. She had her own reasons. In her place, he would have done the same. After all, Wang Xin was her best friend. Then maybe they'll give her a chance. The boy knelt down in front of the well, then reached into it. The man noticed that the boy had fainted. It was clearly their company that had hurt him. Chen Ge asked him not to worry and continue watching. Then the main character approached the boy and called for help. He exclaimed that there was another fainted person. The visitors noticed that the owner had done nothing wrong. If anything, he had tried to save their friend. They almost accused an innocent man. The system gave help to the cute ghost. He was congratulated on the launch of the Muyan Middle School's 2-star scenario hidden mission. In front of us is a girl named Chen Yalin. The mission is to find the pen spirit's best friend and fulfill her wish. Chen Ge decided that hiring a real ghost to work in the haunted house was his dream. Unexpectedly, this day came so soon, he decided to help the spirit of the pen to fulfill her wish. The system notified that an important prop was leaving the confines of the House of Horrors. The main character immediately went outside. Why were they going to leave? The boy would be angry. He headed in their direction and asked why they were leaving. After all, he hadn't dealt with them yet. Fei Yuliang came over and asked him to wait. Chen Ge reached into his pocket and the boy asked what he was doing. He exclaimed that he had done nothing wrong. Then the kid pulled a tag out of his pocket. He asked why he was stealing props from a haunted house. The tag didn't belong to him, and he thought he should call the police. The man immediately came over and apologized to the boss. He explained that the man was slightly injured, so they were returning him to him. First, Chen Ge needed them to delete all the records, or they would not leave this place. The man immediately began deleting all the videos. The main character told Xiaowan that it looked like the haunted house would be temporarily closed today. The girl listened to the boy, but the visitors were outraged and asked not to close. They had been standing in line for so long. Because of a few mean people, so many people would suffer. After such behavior from Qin Guang's studio, the visitors promised to grind them into dust. This scenario is quite independent and can scare people even without its intervention. In order for the lingering spirits of Muyan Middle School to listen to him, The easiest way was to complete the hidden mission of this scenario. In the recording, the spirit pen, it seems, said two names. She called the girls names, namely Chen Yalin and Wang Xin. The boy seemed to hear it well. The main character started calling Captain Lee. The officer asked what he had found this time. The boy asked, not to worry, this time he just needed his help to find one person. This is an ordinary schoolgirl named Chen Yalin. She must be one of the victims of Muyang Middle School 3 years ago. The boy said that this time there was definitely no murder, he just wanted to get some information. The captain, having found out, replied that this child died in a very strange way. Unfortunately, Chen Yalin was found hanged in her bedroom for unknown reasons. It just so happened that on that day her class was in an accident. The bus the class was in fell off a dam. Everyone died, including the driver. The main character was very surprised. The captain explained that there was one person in the class who did not go, so he survived. This person's name is Wang Xin. When Muyan School opened, it had 25 students, all from the orphanage. So for them it is not only a school, but also their home. This number completely coincides with the number of a set of school uniforms. The spirit of the pen said that he wanted to find Wang Xin, the only survivor. The boy turned to Captain Lee. He asked him to do him a favor. He said that he wanted to meet Wang Xin. In front of us stands the building of the city hospital. Captain Lee and the main character were there. They were in the girls' room. As far as the captain knows, Madame Gu later adopted her and admitted her to the hospital for examination. The boy came closer to the hospital bed. He leaned towards the girl, and he told her that her friend wanted to talk to her. So he took this pen with him. The girl sighed when she saw the pen. A note of excitement seemed to appear in her eyes. The pen was on a piece of paper. The protagonist held it with his hand. The girl looked at him intently. She tried to understand what he was going to do. Chenga started to say that the pen was his spirit from his past life, but the girl started to jump up and beg him not to do it. The boy continued to say that he was her spirit in this life. The girl grabbed her head with her hands and asked to stop, but the boy asked the spirit of the pen to answer him. Captain Lee asked the boy what he was doing. Chen Gei explained that he was helping her deal with the problem that was gnawing at her heart. He asked Captain Lee to give him 1 minute. He only needed 1 minute. The boy continued to summon the spirit of the pen. Some inscriptions began to appear on the sheet of paper. The girl grabbed her head with her hands and began to cry. Someone told Wang Xin that she never thought that her stupid joke would cause such a deep injury to her heart. It had nothing to do with her death. She just wanted to scare her when she saw her with her new friend, who knew the rope would be so strong. She didn't do anything wrong, it was just a stupid joke that didn't go as planned. The girl couldn't stop crying. She is very sorry and asks her for forgiveness, but she hopes that she can get rid of bad memories and try to live a great life for everyone. The protagonist continued to talk to the spirit of the pen. He said that she was his spirit in a past life, and he was her spirit in this life. If she wanted to leave, he asked her to leave. Wang Xin couldn't stop crying. She said that this world had become dim and everyone had become silent. All roads led to dead ends, and feelings were wrong. She didn't understand what she had done wrong, but she felt that she had turned into a monster. She asked for help to pull her out of this world. She wants to be free from this pain. Wang Xin asked for help in this. The boy listened to the girl and then took a breath. He sighed calmly. Coming up to her, he put his hand on her head and asked her to rest now. He wished the girl good night. A man appeared at the door. He asked how Wang Xin was and what he had done to her. The protagonist replied that everything was fine. The girl was just sleeping. The man exclaimed that it was incredible. She is severely depressed and cannot sleep without medication. The doctor was very surprised. Captain Lee told the protagonist that he knew the guy was a little different from ordinary people, but Chen Gei laughed and thanked Captain Lee for the praise. He said that it was time for him to go. The system congratulated him on completing the hidden mission of the 2-star scenario. The next part of the hidden mission has been launched. It is necessary to create mannequins for 24 spirits. The boy looked at his phone. He saw that a new mission had appeared. The protagonist looked at his team of ghosts. The pen spirit's wish had been successfully fulfilled. Even though she still doesn't have the desire to see him, she is grateful to him for his help. If he wanted to take the spirit of the pen into his team of haunted houseworkers, let him make a choice. Chen Gei pressed the affirmative answer. The ghost confirmed his consent. The system congratulated him on hiring a special type of sinister ghost, the spirit of the pen. Chen Yalin provides daily fortune-telling. All questions must be within the capabilities of the spirit of the pen. The spirit of the pen feeds on the cries of terror of its visitors. But if he decided to keep the spirit of the pen isolated and offend her, she might decide to leave him. Chen-Ge was sure that more ghosts would join him in the future. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. He wants to build a paradise that only he can rule. He has to create dummies for the 24 spirits in the sealed class. It's quite an interesting task. It is necessary to use real people to sculpt, assemble, polish each bone, apply new paint to the skin, stitch up all the wounds. It is necessary to combine everything with gentle, flawless makeup and a soul that has nowhere to rest, and he can make his first living doll. There used to be a monster in the mirror, so he covered it with a black cloth. The main character became curious about why there were bloodstains here, and he began to remove the towel from the mirror. There was some kind of door in front of him. The number 1 was written on it. The boy couldn't understand how the door in the mirror had returned. Not this. He couldn't understand what was happening. The boy froze in anticipation, after which he looked in the mirror and noticed that there was no bathroom door in the reflection. Could it be that the monster had disappeared? The door was glowing with a bright bloody light. Red rays seemed to be coming out from there. The main character was covered in beads of sweat. The door seemed to open wide by itself. It kept opening. He couldn't understand why. The main character began to nail this door shut in different ways. He did everything to prevent it from opening. And so he hammered it again and finally exhaled. Now the ghost won't be able to get out, but this countdown scares him. If the number goes to 0, something bad will definitely happen. He must quickly become stronger and be prepared for this. Xiao Wan asked the boss if he was there and said that someone was looking for him. Chen-Ge asked who it was. Didn't he say what he needed? The girl replied that he said his last name was Gao, and he brought a strange man here. The protagonist greeted the doctor. He explained that he was Gao Jie's father. Did he remember him? Chen-Ge replied that of course he did. He thanked the man for helping him and asked what brought him here. The man explained that he had come across a unique patient. His symptoms were similar to those of the little boy, so he wanted to ask him some questions. He introduced the student Meng Nan and said that he came to him with his problem about 3 weeks ago. The system informed the protagonist that a special guest had arrived. The guy greeted him. The black phone gave him a clue. It seemed to be Dr. Gao. The man explained that Meng Nan was a cheerful, confident guy, one of his best students. About 3 weeks ago, he began having the same recurring dream. Chen-Ge asked the boy to tell him what kind of dream was bothering him. The boy began to explain that he dreamed that he washed his hair. Every time it's the same, someone is looking at him while he's washing his hair, and the moment he closes his eyes, something pounces on him and tries to strangle him. Meng Nan was really scared. Wouldn't it be possible to go crazy after seeing something like this? The boy suddenly screamed to be let go. He imagined that spirit in front of him. He couldn't see the man standing near him, but he was sure that it was getting closer to him. For the last few weeks, he had been having the same dream. And every night it became clearer. He saw the man's face more and more clearly. Gao asked the boy to calm down, but he replied that he had had the same dream again the night before last, and that it was the last time. The man began to strangle him. And then he woke up and didn't sleep anymore. Chen-Ge thought that he shouldn't provoke him anymore. Gao said that he had been to his rented apartment and had inspected it completely from the inside. There is nothing strange there. He would like to ask the protagonist to help him with this matter. Maybe they will find a clue. He is in a bad condition now and is afraid he won't last long. Chen-Ge replied that he helped him with Fang Yu, so he has no reason to refuse him. He asked when they were leaving. Gao replied that today at 8 o'clock, they would be waiting for him at the Hai Min residential complex. The main character saw some strange outlines. He not only saw them, but also felt them. He felt as if something was pressing on his neck. The system reported that the second special visitor had left. Thanks to his efforts, he had unlocked the mission information. Hidden mission challenge unlocked. Room for 3 people. You need to arrive at the residential complex before midnight and find out the cause of the illness of a special visitor. The mission location is Hai Min Residential Complex. There is one clue. He came from the 3rd hospital ward. The boy remembered a conversation with Uncle Shu. He asked if he knew where his parents were. The man replied that he really didn't know where they were. He heard them saying something. The main character asked his uncle to try to remember what exactly they said. The man said about the 3rd section. He seemed to have vaguely heard them talking about the 3rd section. The mission objective also mentioned this department when he was sorting through his parents' things. who found a note with the inscription, "Third Department." If he completes this task, he may receive information about the disappearance of his parents. This mission is very important, so he told Xiao Xiao that she would go with him. In front of us is the Haimin residential complex. The boy began to knock on the door. He told Meng Nan that it was him. Chen Gei, the boy, knocked for a long time, but no one opened the door. He kept asking if Meng Nan was home. He knocked for a long time. Suddenly, someone opened the door and asked him not to knock. He asked who the boy was looking for. Chen Gei explained that Meng Nan, from apartment 303, was a student at Zhejiang Medical University. The guy who answered the door from the other apartment said he had the wrong address. He had no idea who Meng Nan was. In the past, someone died in this apartment, and after that, no one lives in the apartment. That's why he asks not to knock so loudly. The protagonist was surprised that someone had died in this apartment. He caught his breath. Suddenly, the door opened sharply. It was Meng Nan. He exclaimed that the boy had arrived. The main character was seriously scared. He asked how the guy got there if he didn't answer him. Meng Nan asked him to come in and said that he had been waiting for him for a long time. Chen Gei explained that he had been knocking on the door for a long time and thought that he was not home. Chen Ge noticed that the mirror in the bathroom was facing the door. The mission was talking about 3 people. What 3 people? Surely Meng Nan, the person in the dream, will be the third person. He is probably hiding in the mirror. Meng Nan apologized and said that he had lived alone since he was a child. That's why few people came to his house. Chen Gei asked where his parents were. The guy replied that they had been dead for a long time, or rather, someone had killed them. When he was 6 years old, a thief entered the house and his parents told him to hide. When he was found the next day, his parents were long dead. Since then, he has suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and loves to wash his hair. He washes it several times a day. As soon as he feels even a drop of water on his head, he needs to wash it immediately. The protagonist thought about it and asked if they found him the next day. Where was he hiding? Meng Nan replied that at night, when he noticed some movement, his parents told him to hide while they went to look. He heard a lot of noise from the next room and came out when the noise stopped. He saw a trail of blood leading to the bathroom. When he entered the bathroom, he found no one, and suddenly something flew from the ceiling onto his head. A drop of blood dripped onto his head. The boy remembered how he grabbed himself with his hands. It seems that this is why Meng Nan is upset and washes his hair every day. But the real threat is that someone who wants to hurt him appears in the dream. It definitely has to do with this house. There must be something here that is driving Meng Nan into a dead end. In order to find out the identity of the person in Meng Nan's dream and solve his problem, he needs to break into apartment 303. A guy in the next apartment opened the door and wanted to chat with him. He said he lives in apartment 301. Did he come with friends or just to look at the room? His friend probably lives in 304. He thinks he's crazy. Chen Ge replied that his friend was renting this apartment, so he wanted to rent the neighboring room 303. He asked her to tell him what was wrong with it. Then the man asked if he knew the name of the first tenant of this apartment. His name was Wang Haiming. This is his house. He was lucky enough to become rich. After that, he left his wife to marry another. But a few years later, she left him, took his money, and sent him to a mental hospital. In the end, it was his ex-wife who took pity on Wang Haiming and got him out of the hospital. During the day, everything was fine, but at night he would bang his head against the wall and scream. He said that it was as if something was digging around in his brain. After he died, several residents here saw him. Chen Ge asked if people had seen the dead man. The neighbors said that that's why he tells him that it's a bad place. The protagonist decided that the key was room 303. Meng Nan opened the door and asked the boy what he was doing outside. The protagonist replied that in addition to his room, he also needed to look around. He wanted to go to room 303 to study it. The boy said that the owner does not allow anyone in there. Chen Ge explained that he does not need the owner. He will climb in through the window. Then Meng Nan called him crazy. This is the 3rd floor. The boy asked him to make sure that this is the fastest way. He hoped no one would find out about it. Otherwise, he would have problems. If he explained it, no one would believe him anyway. The guy asked him to be careful because there was a concrete floor below. Suddenly, the main character's phone rang. The boy decided that this was not the right time. He answered the phone. It was Dr. Gao. He said that there were a lot of problems in the hospital today and he would not be able to join him. Chen Ge told the doctor that his call was indeed at the wrong time. He was climbing over the balcony. The doctor asked if he was not at Meng Nan's and which balcony he was climbing over. The protagonist replied that the source of Meng Nan's problems was in apartment 303. He wanted to inspect it before midnight so that no problems would arise. And so the main character got into apartment 303 through the window. Van Hai died in this room. He dedicated the flashlights and decided to search the entire apartment. And then he would think about the next step. Such a nasty smell comes from these pair of sparrows. But how did they get here? This apartment has been empty for several years, but judging by their bodies, someone was here last week to hide this horror under their clothes. The boy started rummaging through his jacket and found some key there. It seems that this key is not for this apartment. He must have picked it up somewhere outside, but even if that's the case, why did he keep the key with him? Some guy shouted out the window to stop pushing him. They shouldn't push him to his death. Chen Gei couldn't understand why the guy from room 302 said that. Only the residents of 302 and 304 can get here without using the front door. Meng Nan is a victim, so there is a high chance that the dead sparrows are here due to the fault of the tenant of apartment 302. But why did he do that? Could it be that he too was possessed by the creature from apartment 303? After Wang Haiming died, what he brought with him from the hospital probably remained in this room. That guy was talking to someone in the plural. Maybe there is more than one monster. Judging by the situation in apartment 303, the monster probably forced him to make blood sacrifices. Apparently, they somehow depend on it, but it seems that these victims are not enough for these monsters. So their demands increased. Sometimes cats, sometimes stray dogs, or even people. It seems like the tenant of apartment 302 noticed him, so it's worth going back and checking on Meng Nan. The main character, looking at the guy, could not understand what had happened to him. Meng Nan stood in the middle of the room. He rolled his eyes and simply fell asleep standing up. At the moment, the guy looked like a sleepwalker. He walked like a sleepwalking zombie. But do sleepwalkers wash their hair in their sleep? The guy really did start turning on the water tap. Then he put his head under the stream. The water began to flow down onto his head. Meng Nan screamed when he felt the drops. He asked not to do this. Chen Ge approached the boy and began to wake him up. He asked him to wake up quickly. The boy began to shake him. He asked him not to sleep, and he began to wake him up as quickly as possible. At this point, Chen Gei sensed something. A black, evil ghost appeared in the mirror. Is there really a monster in the mirror? He stood over Meng Nan and put his hands on his neck. This monster is strangling the guy and trying to get into his body. The main character began to solve this riddle. The glass shattered into small pieces. Chen Gei tried to stop the ghost. Meng Nan started screaming and begging to be let go. The boy tried to help him. The ghost was going to escape. He didn't want to let him. Chen Ge started calling his doll Xiao Xiao. He relied on her now, and he asked his assistant Xiao Xiao to do whatever she wanted with this ghost. The protagonist's ghost doll began to eat the second ghost. Chen Gei approached it. He noticed that she had grabbed him. The boy thanked his ghost. He was surprised that she ate it too. Why did she and Zhang Ya like this kind of food? Behind the main character, there was a man with a sharp knife. He asked how he dared to bite off his hand and threatened to kill him. It seems like the mirror monster has taken over his body. Chen Gei said that he is now in a physical body, so it will hurt even more now. The man raised his cleaver over the protagonist's head and threatened to kill him. There was some kind of strong flash. Everything around was illuminated with a bright yellow-white light. The protagonist raised his bloody hammer as high as possible above the enemy's head. A sharp cleaver flew towards the boy. He managed to dodge and the knife hit the wall. Chen Ge started to approach the guy, but the guy asked him to wait. He sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. But suddenly he exclaimed that he would kill him. The second man ran up and told Xiao Du to stop. He called him crazy. The man asked him to stop quickly. The man asked the other what kind of dope he smoked at night, because that's how he behaved. He fell on the guy, and he started coughing. He suddenly pulled out and asked to answer his question. The guy began to ask to be killed. They couldn't understand what was happening. It was like they were going crazy. The protagonist could not understand where the tube of scarlet light came from. He looked towards the men. One of the guys on whom the fat man fell asked why it was so hard for him. He asked the guy why the fat man lay on him. The man then asked Xiao Du if he was back. The boy asked what was wrong with him. The man replied that everything was fine, just to call him the next time he decided to smoke. Xiao Du tries to stab people. The neighbor said that it scared the hell out of him. Xiao Du didn't understand what he was talking about. How could he slaughter people? What was happening to him seemed like a dream. Chen Gei said that it was all over now. Could he tell me what he remembered from all this time? The guy replied that when he moved into this apartment 3 months ago, the owner immediately warned him that if he felt uncomfortable or encountered anything strange, he could move out at any time. On the very first night, he had a nightmare and felt something strange. Half asleep, he saw a man. He had 2 faces. He was talking to himself and arguing as if they were 2 different people. At first, he didn't pay attention to it, but after this dream repeated itself several times, he kept getting closer to it. Gradually, he began to get confused between sleep and reality. Whether it was day or night, this man was haunting him. He told him that he would not be able to escape from him, and also promised that if he helped him, he would stop bothering him, and he believed him. He followed his orders to catch several small animals and leave them in apartment 303. The next morning, all the animals were already dead. There were no visible wounds on their bodies, so he had no idea what had killed them. He was scared and wanted to run away from it. After all, his appetite was starting to grow. Soon he began to demand from him that after midnight he lure a living person to apartment 303. When he refused, he began to force him by threatening to kill him in his sleep. A few days later, he heard that Meng Nan wanted to rent an apartment. He recommended the Hai Ming apartment complex to him, and he settled into apartment 304. Chen Gei asked if he had taken him straight to apartment 303. The boy replied that he had not. Most often, the 2 faces argued with each other. One day, one of the faces said that if it were not for the fear of the red ghost, he would rather die than share his existence with the trash. The protagonist felt the appearance of a red ghost. He wondered if the red ghost was from the 3rd chamber. Chen Ge said that the creature that had attached itself to Hai Ming came from the 3rd hospital ward, and it knew about the red ghost. Therefore, there is a high probability that the red ghost was in the 3rd hospital ward, a ghost of the same level as Zhang Ya. It will be difficult. Xiao Du said that besides the red ghost, he also realized that they had several weaknesses. The monster rarely appeared at any time other than midnight. It was afraid of light and noisy environments. The most important thing is that, judging by his observations, for some reason he avoided cats. The main character found himself in front of some door. It was red. When the boy approached it and tried to open it, he could not understand why this door would not open. He tried to pull the handle, but nothing worked. Then someone called his name. The boy was covered in beads of sweat. He turned towards the voice. Someone unknown kept calling him. When he opened his eyes, Dr. Gao was standing in front of him. It turned out that it was a dream. The doctor approached him and said that he had finished his business and had come to see how he was doing. Meng Nan has a high fever, so he needs to be taken to the hospital. He thinks that Chen Gei should also rest at home for a while. The boy agreed and asked Meng Nan to be careful. The boy thanked him for helping him that night. He turned his head towards him and said, "Thank you." Beads of sweat were running down his face, apparently from weakness. The protagonist went outside and stopped in the middle of the road. A notification came that the 1-star mission test was successfully completed. Yin Disciple, depending on the details, one can see the Yin God in the Yang Tenge. Other functions are unknown. The main character's gaze changed abruptly. He noticed on his phone that he had been given some more rewards. The player arrived at the mission site, found the cause of the victim's illness, and managed to survive until dawn. The mission was successfully completed. A new scenario was unlocked. The player can freely control the props inside the scenario using the interface accessible via the phone. The hidden element of this mission is unlocked: the key to self-knowledge. The key to self-knowledge is often the only one left capable of self-perception for the mentally ill. They can't say anything about their mental state, so they think they are completely healthy, and as a result, they refuse treatment. When they have such symptoms, this key can help them once. Chen Gei realized that the hidden element of the mission was this key he found. What does the words about help mean? Or is he indirectly hinting that he has mental problems? He doesn't even know what can be opened with this key. The phone beeped again. Tip for using the Living Puppet skill. You need to observe the place where the Living Puppet skill is used. Chen Ge walked up to the door and asked if anyone was there. The door had a sign saying Doll Workshop. The owner of the workshop, Fat Liu, was sitting there. The boy asked the boss if he could make some dolls for him. He said hello and asked to make a custom doll. The man asked him if it was for his entertainment or personal use. Chen Gei laughed and replied that the appearance of the puppets would certainly frighten their personal user. Fatty Liu replied that he was known as the best doll maker in the area. His dolls were even hard to tell apart from real people. That was great. Chenge wanted to place an order for 24 dolls. Similar to these people he showed, Fat Liu explained that it would be a bit difficult. The head sculpture is very difficult, so you will need to find an artist. He asked the boy why he needed them. Chenge replied that he owned a haunted house. The guy offered his boss to rent this space from him, and he would pay him every day. The man agreed. But he said that they would have to add money for the tool and for the raw materials. That's what they agreed on. The primary skill. Living Puppet has opened. The protagonist has entered the workshop. He sat down at the table and began to paint the dolls. The boy turned on the lamp to see better and began to work. And so the second day arrived. Fat Liu began to approach his workshop and open the door. He thought that he didn't know what this guy could turn his studio into overnight. The man opened the door and was very surprised. He saw his mannequins and among them another face. There were a lot of them, much more than there had been before. Fat Liu was even more surprised. Why are there so many heads here? The protagonist appeared and asked the man why he was sitting on the floor. The man replied that when he opened the door, he saw these heads and they were all looking at him. Fat Liu said that he was scared to death. Did he really do them all night? Chenge asked if it really looked realistic. The man noticed that the boy was really modest. 24 heads, each with a different facial expression. Simply incredible quality. He would only waste his talent if he stayed in the haunted house. He really was the best puppeteer he had ever seen in his life. The man offered him a partnership. Just imagine the profits this will bring. With his speed, they could easily enter the high market. Why is he so fixated on this haunted house? The protagonist apologized to the man and replied that he was not interested in making money. Besides, who said his haunted house didn't make him much money? He asked to finish the bodies quickly, as he wanted to start using them soon. Fat Liu asked him to call when he thought it over. When the boy went outside, Xiao Wan came up to him. She asked what was inside. His suitcase looked very heavy. Chenge replied that it contained doll heads. You shouldn't open them because she might get scared. The girl replied that it was never scary to hit and weren't they just dolls. Chenge explained that they were the main component of the Mu Yan Middle School stage. Xiao Wan was surprised by the new props and said that now even more people will be scared of their haunted house. The third chamber mentioned in the recent mission must have something to do with his parents' disappearance. Xiao Wan noticed that the suitcases were indeed heavy. Chenge thought that he must definitely go there. Suddenly, a guy called out to him and said that he had finally found it. The guy introduced himself as Liu Dao. He was a huge fan and never missed any of his broadcasts. They were too good. When Qin Guang copied the content, he was the one who exposed his plagiarism. The protagonist thought that he was most likely Qin Guang's rival, and he came here to cooperate with him. The boy thanked him and asked why he was looking for him. Liu Dao replied that he wanted to eradicate plagiarism. They'll find them places that look scary and abandoned and prepare everything they need there. They'll develop some scary surprises, and he'll just do his live broadcast, and can arrange some advertising from their studio for the live broadcast. He promises to promote it with the best resources on all platforms. They won't give Qin Guang a chance to plagiarize. The protagonist asked if he thought it could beat Qin Guang. Chenge replied that none of these sets were interesting and the scenarios were predictable. He asked about his recommendation. Liu Dao then asked what he wanted to suggest. The boy remembered the third hospital ward for the mentally ill. He said he planned to go there during his next broadcast. The disappearance of the hospital director and patients. According to an anonymous letter, bodies were left in the hospital, the appearance of various bloody messages, groans from closed rooms. Someone opens closed rooms at midnight. What did they see if they went crazy in just one night? Who is the patient and who is the doctor? Screams, cuts, the position of the stitches and the perversions of human nature. The hospital where the sun never rises. The guy told Chenge that the people from their studio might not be brave enough to go to the place he chose. They could edit the script. Chenge replied that it was okay and he didn't need people to follow him. He wanted to go there alone. The guy was surprised if he really planned to be alone in this place after midnight. The protagonist asked if there was any problem with that. The guy replied that of course not, and asked if he had any demands to name them and he would satisfy them. The protagonist noticed that it was raining again outside. He heard someone talking about his courier coming from the haunted house. Someone said that we should ask Uncle Shu for help. He can't handle this alone. Someone else said to his father that his younger brother had been scratched by a stray cat. Chenge listened to these phrases thoughtfully. A man asked his child not to cry and promised to help. He asked if it was this cat that scratched him. The man exclaimed that he would skin her. The cat stood before them, ready to attack, but she was protecting her kittens, who were sitting in a box. The man raised a shovel over the cat and asked the animal to say goodbye to its life. He raised it as high as he could to hit it, but suddenly the main character appeared and stopped him. The man asked what he was doing. He asked him to get lost and not to interfere. Chenga told the boy to calm down. They could discuss everything. His child was almost unharmed. The man asked what he meant, or that the life of this cat was more important than the life of his son. He raised a shovel over the main character's head and asked him to get lost, or he would get it too. Then the boy grabbed him by the throat and began to push him away. The man began to cough. The main character threw him to the floor, and the guy didn't stop coughing. Chenga looked at him intently and said that he asked him to forget about it. Did he understand him? He looked him intently in the eyes, waiting for an answer. The man thought that the look of this boy frightened him. His body froze, he could not even move. Then the boy got scared and asked his brother to wait and discuss everything. He explained that there were surveillance cameras everywhere. A stray cat is not worth it. He grabbed his head and started running. Chenga approached the cat with the kittens. They began to meow cutely looking at him, but the cat was getting ready to attack again. The boy thought that under normal circumstances, wouldn't an armed man resist? Why did he give in so easily? When he grabbed it, there was a coldness coming from its eyes. The cat kept meowing. It must have been a yin-yang vision. The boy stood in front of the box of animals, looking at them. He acted almost instinctively, probably due to the accumulated stress of all the recent events. It seemed that yin-yang knowledge gradually developed, but what properties did it acquire after evolution? The main character walked down the street and suddenly stopped. He heard some kind of slap. Near the box lay a cat under his umbrella. The kittens meowed in fear. The boy looked in their direction, after which he sighed with relief. He approached the veterinary clinic, but the girl apologized and said that they were closed and that he should come tomorrow. Chenge explained that the cat could not wait until tomorrow. The vet said that it looked like the wounds were left by a person after she injured him. The kittens could not be saved. If he took the cat with him, he would bury them there. The protagonist agreed. The boy thought about what the young man from apartment 302 in the Haimin residential complex said about the mirror monster being afraid of cats. Normal animals were afraid of him and bared their teeth because of Zhang Ya. But this cat is not afraid of him. This stray cat can still give him surprises. Chenga took the cat onto his shoulder and told her that from now on this would be her home. The animal looked into the boy's eyes. Her eyes were different colors. The main character explained to the cat that first they would bury her children, and so he found a shovel and chose a specific place to bury the kittens. He said that they would bury them near the house so that she could come to them at any time. Since he has decided to take her in, he must come up with a name for her. They met at night in the rain, so he can call her Night Rain. The cat turned away, then the boy suggested the name Snowflake. She got angry again. He called her Milk, Rice, but she continued to be angry. Chenga told the cat that she didn't look like a cat at all, but rather like a tiger. What if he called her a white tigress? If she behaved well, he promised to give her some dried fish. The cat meowed contentedly in response. Chenga collected 24 dolls and dressed them in school uniforms. After that, he dragged them into the Muyang Middle School scenario. He noticed that when they were dressed, they really did look like real people. The hidden mission of Muyang Middle School had been completed. The dolls for the 24 spirits in the sealed class are ready. The system congratulated the returnees on receiving the Goodwill Mission reward. Once the spirits leave the scenario, they may go crazy. The boy exclaimed that all of Muyang Middle School's hidden missions had been completed. The 2-star scenario could be officially opened. He must not let just anyone into Muyang Middle School. If these spirits get out of control, they can scare people to death. Muyang's high school scenario can help him make his haunted house famous. Its goal is not to create a scary haunted house, but a whole interactive amusement park, a theme park of horror and fear. His cat, White Tigress, meowed. She turned her gaze somewhere. The main character noticed how she suddenly ran forward and asked where she was running. Did something happen? What could she find? The cat began to scratch with her paw, but she didn't stop meowing. Under the table lay the ghost doll, Xiao Xiao. She grabbed the doll by the handle. Chenge explained to the cat that it was their friend, so he asked her not to hurt it. Xiao Xiao is at least an ominous ghost, but she was completely ignored by the cat. The boy asked if she had found anything else. The cat began to meow and purr. She chose a direction, namely to the toilet on the first floor where the mirror is. The cat walked towards the toilet door. Chen-Ge knew that's where she would go. It's midnight now, and the cat has reacted very strongly to this room and the mirror in it. When the boy went inside, he noticed that blood was seeping from the mirror. The numbers came back again, and the countdown started again. Chen-Ge stared at his reflection. The door in the mirror shook as if something was pushing it from the other side. Streams of scarlet light began to come out of the door. It was a terrible, bloody world. Chen-Ge stood in front of the door, watching this. There appeared some ominous red shadow, as if hands were reaching forward. Scarlet red haze around, and many hands. He couldn't understand what was happening. These hands began to pull the boy into the mirror. There was definitely someone behind the door. It tries to drag him into the mirror. The protagonist clenched his teeth as hard as he could. He exclaimed that he would not give in so easily. Chen-Ge began to resist with all his might and try to escape from the ghost's clutches. Chen-Ge continued to struggle with the ghost that was pulling him into the mirror. He couldn't get rid of it. Suddenly, the cat he had taken for himself began to meow. She straightened her claws and rushed to the mirror. The animal's eyes were red. She rushed forward. The cat caught up with the ghost and grabbed his hand. There was a lot of scarlet red blood around. The boy kept screaming. The mirror kept pulling him in. The fight continued. The protagonist could not give up. Somehow he got out of the mirror, after which he sighed with relief. He flew away and fell to the floor. Chen-Ge couldn't stop coughing. Everything around him was turned upside down. Sweat was running down the boy's face. He began to wipe himself with his hand and thought that it was close. He almost pulled it in. Didn't he figure out the ghost in the mirror? Why was that door open? When he was being pulled in, he saw a blood-red world in the mirror. Could it be that there is another world in the mirror? And the ghost that Zhang Ya ate was just a monster of that world. This mirror can connect two worlds, and they just wanted to drag him into that world. The cat sat down next to the boy and began to meow. Chen-Ge told her that if it weren't for her, he might have ended up in another world. It seems like the countdown only activates when the door is opened. The monster, on the other hand, must have some reason for coming to this world. Now the numbers only disappear after midnight. Everything should be calm now. The boy told the cat that she could rest now and that he would feed her in the evening. The cat began to purr. Chen-Ge decided to check other locations. At the end of the corridor, there was a crossroad and there were 3 more exits. In front of him were apartments with different numbers, starting from 302. With these expansions, he thinks the entire parking lot will soon be filled with his gruesome scenes. He thinks the horror maze would be a good name. The next scenario could be the 3rd chamber. It is also connected to his parents' disappearance and he should prepare well. In front of us is a farmer's market. Traders were selling various goods to people. One of them said that pigs' hooves, ears, and tails were sold at a lower price. He asked the boy what he wanted. Chen-Ge replied that he wanted to buy his butcher's knife. He asked how many pigs he had killed. The man explained that he could not sell this one. But his grandfather was a butcher and was going to take the knife to his grave, saying he would not allow his children to do the same thing he did. However, his stubborn father insisted on keeping the knife for himself. Since then, bad luck has followed them. The knife is cursed, so he won't ask much for it. 100 and he is his. Chen-Ge noticed that this knife was cool. It looked very impressive. This knife is really unusual. He feels its energy. The man explained that when he was little, he saw his grandfather enter the pigsty with this knife. Not a single animal dared to make a sound. Chen-Ge immediately bought the knife. The system notified that the happy patrons were ghosts and congratulated on winning 2 successful roulette spins. Chen-Ge exclaimed that he couldn't be such a loser who won the evil ghost twice in a row. But what is this? Chen-Ge was congratulated for receiving a unique item of Valentine's Day white candy. The sweet taste danced on his tongue. When he ate this candy, Zhang Ya would appear. He received the gift that Zhang Ya couldn't give when she was still alive. Zhang Ya's affection increased a little. The boy realized that he received the gift that Zhang Ya couldn't give when she was still alive. This sounds very strange. This face looks like one of Zhang Ya's acquaintances. Just don't let them say that she turned one of her acquaintances into candy. In terms of probability, it was time to get something good. The system congratulated him on getting the rare item of the crying ribbon. When he first listened to the tape, he realized that something was wrong. The empty tape contained only white noise that could not be erased. He tried all possible ways to remove it, but in the end, he heard strange sounds that became a harbinger of his death. The boy won another sinister ghost. There was a tape cassette in front of him. Chen-Ge wondered who was using them in their day. Even in a dump, it would be hard to find a player. The probability of getting it is low. So this ghost on the film should be a little weaker than Zhang Ya. If it is weaker, it is not necessarily bad. It will be easier for him to negotiate with him. Knife, salt, lighter, and flashlight. It seems he took everything. But suddenly the boy remembered that there was something else. He called the spirit of the pen and said that he wanted to take advantage of today's fortune-telling opportunity, so he asked for help in answering one question. Can he tell what danger awaits him in the 3rd hospital ward? The boy took the pen in his hands and put it on the sheet of paper. The pen began to write something. She wrote that certain death awaited him. After reading this inscription, he thought, the protagonist told the pen that he hoped it was wrong, otherwise, the end awaits them all. Chen Ge put the pen back in his pocket. The system congratulated him on opening the mission to test the 3rd hospital department. The boy decided that after he completed this mission, he would be able to find even more clues about his parents. I wonder what he could find there. The boy went outside. A guy called out to him and turned around. He looked at him in surprise when he saw the cat on Chen Ge's shoulder. The protagonist explained that this was his new friend. What a sensation it would be when a white cat appeared on the air. The friend laughed and replied that he trusted him. Qin Guang's live broadcast will start at 10 o'clock in the evening. They must try hard to beat them. Chen Ge asked where his broadcast will be this time. The guy replied that it was Mu Yang Middle School, where he had been last time. Only this time, he decided not to copy it, but hired a scriptwriter to develop the script, so they wouldn't be able to accuse him of plagiarism and he would get away with it. Chen Ge asked what he was proposing to do. The guy laughed and suggested ignoring him. They were almost ready so they could start any time. Another man asked Old Man Liu if he was sure this guy could handle it. They sacrificed slots for 2 other streamers, each of whom averaged 100,000 viewers. They were only able to organize a 2nd-level advertisement. The guy replied that Chen Ge had a unique charm. His understanding of fear was different from most. The protagonist asked his friend not to worry and began to convince him that everything would be fine. The friend replied that he had collected some information and asked to see if he liked anything. There are only 3 buildings on the hospital grounds, all of them connected to each other. The 1st and 2nd buildings housed regular patients, and their entrances and windows faced the sunny side. But the 3rd building is the most mysterious. It was the quarantine zone. The most dangerous patients were housed here, and the windows and doors were hidden from the sun. A friend advised him to be extremely careful when he was in the 3rd hospital ward. According to the artist's description, the 3rd ward was forbidden to regular patients. Chen Ge asked why this 3rd hospital ward was so special. Or did they manage to find any additional information about this ward? The friend replied that some of it seemed to be made up. There are people who claim that a doctor was once killed there, and the patient was only discovered a few days later. Some even say that there are not people living there, but strange creatures. This must be fiction. The main character answered that they need to check the camera because they have little time. It is important to remember that they need to stay in the tent. They should not rush off to look for him, regardless of what they see or hear. And so, the boy came to some building. He thought that he had found this place. And so the live broadcast began. The main character greeted everyone. He explained that when day turns to night, strange sounds start coming from the hospital. Words written in blood appear in the corridors. The entire center occupies a large area. It consists of 3 buildings. He suggested looking into the first one. The door creaked softly. The lock was broken. It had obviously been taken out by brute force. The parents talked about Ward 3 right before they disappeared, but why did they think it was such a special place? The wards here are crowded and cramped. If you live in such a place, you can gradually lose hope for survival. The boy wandered around the room and then noticed some writing on the wall in the corner. The handwriting was different, which means it wasn't written by one person, but he can't make out what's written here. When some patients start to act up, they start mumbling something unintelligible, as if they were talking in their sleep. It feels like a ghost from the mirror has put his hands here. Perhaps in the 3rd building he will find a passage to another world. The protagonist thought that it was something like a nurse's station in front of him. This is an iron cage. Perhaps these cages were used to keep animals. They began to come closer. The duck is half-baked. The feathers are not plucked. It does not look like it is eaten by people. Why are there 2 bulls in the cage? There were probably 2 dogs in this cage. The boy picked up a cup and noticed that one was filled with water, and the other cup had a strong smell. It smelled like rat poison. There were also inscriptions in the cage. Maybe this cage is not for animals, but for people. There is clearly someone else here besides him. Someone lives in this hospital, abandoned 5 years ago, and he is not alone. The main character and his cat began to move on. The boy decided to find this person. When he got to the main door, it was closed. Who could close the front door? He remembers leaving it open when he came in. Suddenly, the cat stopped and began to growl. She looked menacingly somewhere up. The protagonist wondered what could have happened. The cat was looking at the landing. There was some kind of monster man there. What could it be? The boy began to look closely. He could not understand whether it was a person. The cat began to hiss. After which, she sped up and ran somewhere. Chenge asked her where she was going. He took his huge iron hammer in his hands and asked the cat to wait and not to run away. But he lost her. The man's face seemed asymmetrical to him. But was it a man? He locked the door and wanted to lure him into a trap. At least he figured out that this strange guy lived here. It is necessary to remember that the center consists of 3 buildings, and from the first there is an exit to the second. Chenge wandered along the corridor, after which he entered some hall. This hall looked like a funeral hall. There was a portrait of someone on the wall. Maybe it was the nurse who became a victim in the 3rd hospital ward. It feels like the portrait is looking at him. Why did they make a funeral hall in the hospital? And so the boy approached the door with the inscription. It was the 2nd hospital department. He asked the white tigress what she was doing there, but the sound was completely different from the white tigress. The boy began to enter some hall. In front of him stood a large cage again. He came closer. There was some girl sitting in the cage, but she was all in chains and with a gag in her mouth. Chenge put his hammer on his shoulder. He realized that these cages were for people. There were 3 victims in them, a woman in the middle cage and men on either side. Chenge asked how long they had been locked in here. The old man silently licked his fingers, as if trying to remember the taste of the food he had just eaten. The boy said he couldn't just let them out. There might be a killer among them. It would be too dangerous. He asked why they were locked in here. He noticed that this guy was the calmest and the most suspicious. 3 cages, but only the woman is tied up and gagged. Something is clearly wrong here. She is difficult to control, which is probably why she is tied up. Then, why don't the others ask for help? Why do they just sit and look at him? The boy approached the girl and asked her not to worry. He was here to save her. But one of the men advised him not to remove her gag because she was very noisy, he can tell. But in exchange, he hopes that he will not remove the gag of this woman. Chenge asked the man to first tell him who he was. The man replied that he was a patient here, Wang Haiming. Chenge closed his eyes and lowered his head. He raised his huge hammer and struck the bars of the cage with all his might. He exclaimed that if the man lied again, he would hit him on the head with it. Then he replied that his name was Xu Tong, patient number 5. His name is Xu Tong. He suffers from Fregoli syndrome. He believes that everyone around him is the same person, and that he lives in a world of illusions. The boy asked if he knew Wang Haiming. The man said he knew him. He attacked the medical staff. The doctor tied him up and sent him to the cell of the 3rd department. Afterwards, his family took him away, but he died near the hospital. Chenge wondered if he could trust his words. He asked him to tell him something about the old man. Why did he have 2 plastic bowls in his cage? The man replied that his son had put them there as a kind of retribution. One bowl with clean water, the other with poison. Life or death, it all depends on luck, the boy asked. Why his son was doing this? The man explained that the old man's body was bad, but his character was even worse. After his wife left, he was left alone at home, and his life depended entirely on his son. His son was a doctor, and although his salary was not high, it was enough for both of them. According to rumors, long-term communication with mentally ill people drove the son crazy. As a result, he injured several of his patients. He was fired from his job and placed here as a patient. The father found himself a new wife and left him. When the hospital closed and his wife left him, he took his son and put him in a cage, then put 2 bowls in front of him, and did everything that his son does to him now. Chenge thought that this story perfectly suited one of the patients in the 3rd hospital. Patient number 8 suffered from one-sided spatial neglect and was locked in the 3rd building. He was described as extremely dangerous. Xiangqing was once a psychiatrist. His intelligence was higher than most. So even though he was a psycho, he was special. Maybe he is the killer hiding in the mental hospital. The enemy has a geographical advantage, so it will be difficult. The main character asked how he knew the story of this old man so well. Maybe he was his son. The man exclaimed that he knew he wouldn't believe him. They never trusted him, and he didn't trust them. The man asked them to leave him alone. He hid here, but was still found. He asked to stop following him. Chen Ge thought that he could not be saved. Why did all the patients of the 3rd hospital department return to this place? Maybe they are attracted to something, or they are all under the control of ghosts, so they were forced to return. He decided to find out. The man began to stop him because he promised not to remove the gag from the girl if he answered the questions. Chen Ge asked him to shut up because the man lied to him first. The man exclaimed that he had not lied. They were all liars. The boy began to take the gag out of the girl's mouth and said that he was not going to hurt her. When he took the gag out of her mouth, the girl started screaming. She said the word hand, and she started screaming the word hand over and over again. Her eyes were kind of crazy. The man grabbed his head with his hands and exclaimed that it was all over. They were already coming and they would all die. The girl continued to shout the word hand. Some 2 shadows began to run along the corridor. They rustled their huge axes on the floor. It made a very unpleasant, menacing sound. 2 creepy monster men approached the cages. One of them was missing an arm. The girl in the cage started screaming again. The word hand was constantly on her lips. The protagonist put a gag in her mouth again and decided that she was crazy too. He asked her to calm down because he would not touch her. All he needs is for her to answer his questions. Chen Ge asked her to just nod her head, and that's it. Has she seen many hands and is she afraid of them? Patient number 4 lost his arm in an accident and was then diagnosed with a phantom limb because he believed his arm was still there. The boy asked her if she had seen a man with 1 arm. If this man had a weapon, what was he carrying? A saw, a knife, or an axe? He asked her again not to be afraid. If she was really innocent, he would save her. He came here today to reveal all the secrets and make sure that all the madmen would be punished by the law. What a painful experience she had to go through to suffer so much. The men in the cages began to clutch their heads. One of them shouted that it was all over and that it was his fault. They were attracted by this crazy woman. He shouted that they would all die. Chen Ge turned to him and asked if he was sure that they would die. If he comes here, then he'll introduce him to his hammer, and they'll see who dies. 2 men with axes in their hands were walking down the corridor. They were getting closer and closer. Someone's hand reached for the door. They had already reached the main entrance. Chen Ge stood outside the door, raising his huge, heavy hammer onto his shoulder. One of the men was already there. The protagonist realized that the real criminal had already arrived. He was ready to strike him. The boy jumped out and tried to hit the man, but he managed to deftly dodge. The eyes of this evil ghost man changed color. They glowed with an eerie radiance, after which the man flew back and landed on the cold, hard floor. Chen Ge asked him, regardless of whether he was a human or a ghost, to defeat him first. Let him take the other hand and see what else he can do. Chen Ge kicked the man in the head. The main character came closer to him and apologized, saying that it was too hard. He wanted to ask a couple of questions, but apparently not all at once. The guy held his foot on the man's head. A second man appeared behind him, holding a shovel. Chen Ge said that one-on-one was much fairer. He asked the man what he thought about it. When the boy looked at him, he saw an ugly, distorted face. The man with the shovel turned sharply and ran towards the exit. The shovel fell to the floor with a clang. Chen Ge realized that he was scared, and he looked quite scary. Another one seemed unconscious. Suddenly, Liu Dao contacted the boy. He asked to hear for his Chen Ge. The boy replied that he always chooses the time. Liu Dao explained that he was a good man, and the popularity of the broadcast had exceeded 150,000. The broadcast was already becoming difficult to control. Chen Ge, meanwhile, began to tie up the man without one arm with a rope. Liu Dao said that he takes a hammer and runs after monsters, and also locked people in cages. He walks on the edge of the blade. A little more, and he'll lose control, but they've already finished and called the police so he can go out. The protagonist laughed and replied that they had defeated Qin Guang anyway. How could he leave now? The boy thanked all the viewers for their work. This evening also brought him many surprises, but this is not the end, and he will show them something that no one can repeat. It's time to move to the 3rd section. The key to his parents' disappearance may be there. The main character began to walk towards danger. He did not let go of his huge, heavy hammer. The boy wondered what kind of icy wind was enveloping this place, and what else was ahead. Chen Ge came closer. He couldn't tell if these were dolls or what. These dolls were made of pillows. They looked like mogul bags. One of them had Zhang Qixi's inscription on it. Even though they are not made very well, for some reason they make him very uneasy. Coming closer, the boy noticed that each doll had a name. That is, they represent real people. He reached out his hand to one of them. The protagonist decided to sprinkle the dolls with salt so that they would not come to life. He needs to be more economical with his last packet of salt. He can't be so wasteful anymore. Another nurse's station appeared in front of him. He hoped there would be no cages here. Oddly enough, all the journals, notes, and medications are neatly laid out, and the counter is spotlessly clean, as if it had been recently used. The boy approached some papers. On one of them were written names. Hadn't he seen these names on dolls? Someone comes here every night to give medicine to the dolls. Who could do something like that? The person who prescribed the medicine should still be around. He probably didn't go very far and is now wandering around somewhere nearby. The names on the bags were written recently, but they were probably just signed. But who could do such a thing at night? Or he force-fed his victims narcotic drugs. But why do we need dolls? All the patients in the third department died? Maybe that's why they were replaced with dolls. The main character couldn't understand why everything was so confusing here. Then he heard some creaking and knocking. What could it be? It doesn't make a single sound while it's walking. What kind of patient is this? He had a distorted face and it looked like he was a woman. The main character remembered the photograph that hung in the first room. Could it really be her? He wondered if this woman was dead. Even after her death, she still wanders around the hospital, like a puppet who still takes care of the patients. Chenga stood behind the wall, watching her, putting the puzzle pieces together to complete the picture. The psychiatric hospital had been abandoned for 5 years, but the third hospital ward continued to function. The patients simply turned from alive to dead. All these changes can be connected to this mysterious door. Could it be that because the door had been left open for so long, the world outside the door and the real world had already begun to overlap? The main character walked further down the corridor. He could not understand where the door itself was. In front of him was the director's office. He wondered why, out of the entire building, this office was located here. The boy came as close as he could and then opened the door. He stood in the doorway and looked ahead. Chen Gi walked up to one of the boxes. He noticed that it had a seal on it. That meant the police were looking for something here. He picked up a piece of paper that had notes about Men Nan on it. The boy from the third ward is being capricious again. He was the first to see the door, so he suspects that the door's appearance is connected with him. But wasn't the third ward empty? Where did the child come from? He looks very much like Men Nan, and his mother is probably nearby. The main character realized that his mother was sick. So he was born here, and in the third section, Men Nan is the most amazing child he has ever seen. He is different from other people in many ways, and sometimes it seems that he sees things that others cannot see. After giving birth, his mother went crazy and was locked in the third ward, so the boy grew up without a mother. He was withdrawn and often talked to himself. After testing, they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. So it turns out he was already sick in childhood. But this is not surprising at all. After all, he was born and raised in a mental hospital. Anyone would go crazy there. But when the child saw his mother, the first thing he said was not mom, but door. The boy pointed his finger at the door. It seemed he was telling them that he wanted to get closer to that door. No one had taught him that word before. When the child learned to walk, he sometimes approached the third ward himself and looked at the door, which was several times taller than him. This door is exactly the same as the door that was in the mirror of his house. Why did Men Nan communicate calmly with ghosts as a child, but when he grew up, he couldn't even cope with the ghost from the mirror? The door appears exactly at midnight. It stays for a minute before disappearing. He sealed off the third hospital ward and forbade anyone to approach the third ward at night. He asked the nurses on night duty to watch the bleeding door. Fresh blood seeped through the door, staining it red. It was like a wall from a nightmare. He asked to watch the entrance to the third ward. At midnight on the third day, everyone heard the door open. He tried all the methods he could think of, but he couldn't stop it. Chen Ge wondered if Men Nan could be the reason for the door to appear. It looks like he'll need Meng Nan's help to deal with the door to his haunted house. He's the key to closing it. As the protagonist held the paper in his hands, the door behind him suddenly creaked. This is a nurse's outfit. Apparently she is looking for her magazine. The monster woman walked in growling menacingly. She began to approach the boy, flashing her wild eyes. The monster woman was approaching faster and faster. She was ready to attack the protagonist. But the boy, without thinking twice, took out his powerful axe and raised it over the woman's head. With one heavy blow, he pushed her away and she fell backwards with all her might, breaking the stone table. The dead nurse monster began to rise to her feet again. She cast an angry glance at the boy. The protagonist exclaimed that she was finished. He raised his hammer over her head again. The boy, without thinking twice, dealt her a heavy blow to the head. The monster woman did not stop growling. The main character decided to use a knife that he had just recently acquired. This pig knife was just right for a monster woman. He set his hammer aside, and grabbing a sharp, huge cleaver, he began to approach the enemy. But what a rage she had! She bit the hammer with her teeth, which he had not managed to put aside. The boy asked her if he had offended her in any way. He began waving the knife, after which he cut her into pieces. The monster woman began to scream and fall backwards. She flew far away and fell to the floor. Her teeth were clenched tightly and creaked throughout the room. She began to dissolve, like a ghost that was there and suddenly disappeared. Chenga stood over the ghost's clothes and thought that everything was over. Then the boy's phone rang. His friend exclaimed that it was a success and the number of viewers had reached 300,000. Chenga asked about Qin Guang. The boy replied that after he entered the classroom at Muyang Middle School, his video feed suddenly turned into a black screen. Viewers went looking for similar content and stumbled upon it. Most viewers came to his channel and never left. For a professional studio, even 5 minutes of downtime is a tragedy. This can only mean one thing. Something has happened to his team since they have been disconnected for more than 30 minutes. Chen Gi replied that he warned Qin Guang, but he refused to listen, so he can't be blamed for this. He hopes he will recover quickly and think twice before plagiarizing other people's content next time. Today, Muyang School is not so dangerous, and the ghosts there are not evil, so everything should be fine. Now the boy decided to continue. He must find this door that leads to new adventures. The main character noticed that there was a red mist in front of him, like blood. In front of him was a sign saying, "No entry." He walked on, looking ahead. The boy realized that it was this door that destroyed the hospital. The red fog was everywhere. Chen Ge wondered if something similar would happen in his haunted house if he left her. Then someone's footsteps were heard. Someone was growling angrily not far from the boy, approaching him. It was a monster woman. She seemed to come to life. The main character decided that she had been resurrected. But how could that be? She crumbled to dust. Maybe it has something to do with this place. The boy exclaimed that her mouth smelled bad and asked her not to open her mouth anymore. And he thought that if he didn't deal with her now, he would have big problems. Is the door opening? It seems like something is definitely going to come out of there. Some hands started to appear through the red haze. The main character began to look closely and decided that this creature was coming towards him. The ghost woman was getting closer and closer. The boy realized that he was trapped. He gripped his huge metal hammer in his hands and gritted his teeth as he prepared to attack. He raised his hammer and at full speed struck the body of the female monster with it. She flew back a little towards the open door, to where some new monster was. Chen Ge felt like the monster woman had taken a liking to another monster. It began to pull her in. The monster pulled its hand out of the red shroud. It began to pull the monster woman harder and harder. She could do nothing about it. The monster woman tried to break free, but it was no use. Many hands grabbed her. They held her by the body, head and legs, and they kept pulling her into the room. The monster woman began to scream. Then the monster grabbed her face with its terrible hands and paws. The protagonist decided that it did not belong here. He closed the door with his foot. The boy helped the monster and pushed the female monster inside. When she flew into the room, the boy quickly grabbed the door and pushed it. And finally, he firmly closed the heavy door. What kind of monster was this, and why was it so strong? The boy sat down in front of the door and thought that he needed to close it somehow, at least temporarily. If it doesn't work out, he's afraid he won't live to see the dawn. He hopes it will hold him off while he looks for a way to close it. The protagonist began calling Dr. Gao. He hoped that the man would pick up the phone. It seemed that he would need Meng Nan's help to deal with the door in his haunted house. When the doctor answered, he asked for Meng Nan. He had an emergency. The man explained that he was still in the hospital and what he needed from him. The boy explained briefly. Dr. Gao replied that he was on his way to the hospital and would be there in 20 minutes. He asked him not to hang up and to let him know if he needed anything. Meanwhile, behind the boy, behind the open door, there was a man with a gun. There was a monster behind his shoulders, growling menacingly and flashing its huge, sharp fangs. Chen Gu realized that he couldn't wait for those 20 minutes. The monster had already grabbed the man and was dragging him somewhere. This guy heard the nurse screaming and came here. He can't use the hammer. What should he do? The main character came closer and thought that he somehow didn't want to cut a person with a knife. The monster ran after the man and kept holding him and growling an angry growl. The boy couldn't understand what was sitting on his shoulder. The monster offered the boy to play some game. The monster controls him and talks with his help. He said that if the guy wins, he will let him go, but if he loses, he will give him his body. The game is called Who Will Speak First. Chen Ge thought that this was a game in which the player was doomed to lose because there was no time limit. The boy agreed, but said that he would have to edit the rules. The monster exclaimed that he couldn't deceive him. It would be better to kill him for him. Chen Ge thought that he definitely had some weak points. When he tries to attack him, he can only move his upper body, while his lower body is still attached to his distorted face. This means that he can't move his lower body easily. If he could just jump on his victim's shoulders, he wouldn't have to lure them in under the pretense of playing. So when he moves from one body to another, he is probably at his weakest. The monster did not let go of his victim, wrapping this man in his tentacles. The protagonist asked the monster to wait. He exclaimed that he agreed to play this game with him. Before the game started, he asked the boy to throw away his knife. Chen Ge listened to the monster, and the cold weapon flew to the floor with a ringing sound. The boy raised his hands and said he agreed to play without a knife. He asked what he should do next. The monster asked to just stand still. From that moment on, no matter what he saw or heard, he was not allowed to make a sound. If he makes any sound, he will lose immediately. The monster began to wriggle around the guy and hiss viciously. He pulled out his long, creepy tongue. The monster's eyes glowed with a bright red light. He approached the protagonist. The boy decided that he really did look scary. That's why everyone lost to him. He hopes that he can hurt him. Chen Ge grabbed the pen in his pocket with one hand. The monster noticed that the boy was still silent. Then how about something more exciting? When the monster turned its back on him, the boy decided that this was his only chance. He raised his hand up. In it, he held his pen and exclaimed that this was his answer. He made him eat ink. The spirit of the pen was supposed to come to the boy's aid. But without thinking twice, he stuck the pen into the eye of the terrible monster. Blood immediately spurted from his face. Chen Ge flew up and the monster shouted at him to kill this man. The main character grabbed the knife that was lying on the floor with his hand. He flew up to the monster with a deft movement and waved his knife. He was already close to him. The monster didn't expect such agility from the boy. Chen Ge cut the monster's body in half with a sharp movement. The monster called him a liar. He asked the man to help him get rid of it. Suddenly, two men appeared with sharp, bladed weapons in their hands. The boy realized that it was Xu Tong and the one-armed man. For him, this was a very bad sign. It seems that all the patients in the 3rd hospital ward are possessed by monsters. One of the men asked not to be afraid. He said that soon the boy would become one of them. Chen Ge realized that this was already really bad. They had blocked his retreat, their movements were clear and coordinated. It seems the 3-star scenario is still too difficult for him. The protagonist is wary. He took the candy given to him by the ghost and decided that it was his very last trump card. He took out a candy from his pocket and began to summon the ghost of Zhang Ya. The girl was already behind him. Her hair flew around. The main character began to unwrap the candy and took out the candy. The monster girl began to eat this sweetness, after which she rose as high as possible. Chen Ge asked the ghost girl to help him. The men were already running towards the protagonist. Then Zhang Ya turned towards her opponents and began to fly towards them faster and faster. She reached out her hand to one of the monsters and blood spattered all over the area. The protagonist decided that it was very cruel. The difference in strength was great. He can't help her. His huge hammer is still propping up the door. Blood has started to spread across the walls. He needs to lock it quickly. Finally, the main character received a call from Dr. Gao. The boy answered the call immediately. It came from the hospital room. It was Meng Nan. Thanking the boy for helping him last time, Chen Ge asked to let go of the formalities. He knows that his child personality is hiding in his mind. He must know how to wake it up. The guy replied that he must be wrong. What other personality? Chen Ge explained that it was inside him. He knew how it had affected his life. Maybe he was trying to escape it. But some things you can't escape even if you pretend well. Chen Ge asked Meng Nan to look at the photograph. It was a hospital room in the 3rd hospital ward where his mother was being treated. He asked him to focus on the door that separated him from his mother, and he explained that he was now near the room where his mother lived. He wanted the guy to help him close this damn door. He asks to awaken the second personality. He is the one he is looking for now. But Meng Nan replied apologetically that he cannot help him. He explained that he was not with him. He was locked behind that door. The protagonist was very surprised that his younger self was on the other side. Meng Nan replied that, to be honest, he is his true identity. His memory starts from the age of 4. The main personality was born in a mental hospital and considered crazy. Until the age of 4, he tried with all his might to correct his point of view, and his only support was his mother. When his mother was killed, the person who saw everything decided to give up the normal world. One night, the hospital director and Dr. Chen arranged for him to fall asleep in the 3rd ward. And what happened next, he doesn't know. Most likely they gave him a sleeping pill, and when he was sleeping, they called the main personality. When he woke up, it was already midnight. He opened his eyes and saw that the main personality was nearby. He told him to keep it a secret from everyone and pointed to the clock in the hallway, told him not to sleep, then he led him out of the room. He stayed behind the door and closed it. Chen Ge thought that this explained why he couldn't resist the mirror monster. He was the only person who could close the door, and he spent 10 years behind that door. All these years, the door was closed, and only 5 years ago, when the hospital closed, the door was opened again. Perhaps something happened to Meng Nan's true identity outside the door. Chen Ge decided it would be better to retreat. The main character himself did not understand what he was doing. Why he was doing this? Why he couldn't just give up? Is it really all because of his parents? He really needs to figure this out and find clues to find his parents. The boy walked forward, making his way through the red haze. It was as if something was stopping him. The main character opened the door and managed to get in. The boy caught his breath. When he found himself behind the door, he was surprised. Could this really be the world behind the door? The walls, ceiling, and everything in this room are identical to what is in the real world. Although there are still some small differences, he was standing around the corner and looking at some doll. Then he walked on, thinking about where Meng Nan's young self was. There was a pool of blood in front of him. He came closer and noticed that the puddle began to change, turning into a hand. It was brutal. The hand came out of the pool of blood and started to crawl out. She pointed her finger in some direction. Was the hand really showing him the way, but where was it leading him? Chen Ge decided to obey the hand and go there. In front of him was the inscription, Electroshock Therapy. The main character began to open the door. A boy was lying on the bed. It seems that this is the young personality of Meng Nan. The boy came as close to him as possible. He began to peer at the boy and asked him to wake up. There was no answer. It seemed like an unusual dream. How could he wake him up? Chen Ge told the boy that if he did not wake up, he would cut him down with his knife. He had the feeling that someone was holding the knife and not letting it go down to the boy's head. Then a man appeared behind him. He exclaimed that he had never thought that there would be anyone else who could enter the door besides him. The man said that this was not the place where he could be. He asked to leave the boy and go away quickly. Chen Ge wondered who this man was. He asked the man who he was and asked if he was the director of this place. The man asked him to be quiet. In this place, he is the only one who can communicate with him, and also the only one who can help him. He can leave at any time. The boy will stay. He must stay in this room. Chen Ge said no. The man said that he might not believe it, but they were now in this boy's nightmare. If anything happened to him or he woke up, they would be stuck here forever. The boy said that he admitted that it was a nightmare. He leaned towards the man as he spoke about it. Well, if it's a nightmare, shouldn't it wake him up? The man's gaze changed. He exclaimed that the young people were very curious. He had told him that the boy would stay here. Chen Ge thought that he was in trouble. He couldn't cope without Zhang Ya. The man said that he would not leave it so easily. He exclaimed that he would have to die here. The man was enveloped in a red haze. He began to approach the boy, but the boy froze in place. The ghost girl was already approaching him, her hair fluttering in the wind. She was very creepy and menacing in appearance. Her eyes glowed empty, only small red lights burned in them. The protagonist exclaimed that Zhang Ya had come to save him. The ghost girl was getting closer and closer to the man. Chen Ge was glad that Zhang Ya had come to his aid and asked if she had come back to look for him. Zhang Ya approached the man. He exclaimed that he had sent her away. Then why did she come back? The main character went to meet them. He told the ghost girl that he would help her. The guy picked up his sharp knife and ran to help. Suddenly, someone grabbed his hand. It was a little boy, Meng Nan. The boy realized that he had finally woken up. The boy had a creepy look, black empty eyes with little dots instead of pupils. He hopes the boy won't go wild. Chen Ge explained that he did it to wake him up. He didn't want to hurt him. He knows about him and came here to save him. The main character said that his second personality was attacked by a monster, but he saved it. He asked if he had a mother. The boy asked if Chen Gei could show him a photo. The boy immediately handed him the photo. He explained that in this photo he is with his mother, and he found it in the director's closet. The old man just said that this world is his nightmare, and when he wakes up, the door connecting the two worlds will close. The boy asked if it was true. The boy replied that this world existed before him. He was just the first one who discovered it in this place, and that he should not ask him about this world. The more he learns, the harder it will be to leave. He can only say that this world is a reflection of the darkest secrets of the human soul. It is filled with sin and horror. It is similar to the real world, but different from it as day is from night. The boy exclaimed that he had more questions and asked the boy not to leave. At this time, the ghost girl had already eaten the man's body. His head lay on her lap. Chen Ge noticed that she had already eaten his body. Only his head remained. It was very creepy. The main character asked the boy to stop, asked him not to leave. The boy approached the ghost woman and asked her to leave the old man with him. Then he would let her go. Chen Ge told the two to calm down. They are all on the same side here. There is no need to harm each other. The head was still asking to let him go. The girl carried him away on her hair. Chen Ge asked what mistake this old man had made. The boy replied that when the door appeared, this old man used patients as test subjects. He made patients walk through the door, including his mother. He is a very hypocritical and selfish person. It was because of him that several more patients suffered, and he eventually fell asleep. The head said that she took care of him after his mother died. Everything he did was for him. But the boy asked the head to shut up. He experimented on his mother and then locked him in here. Does he think it's good for him? He turned his patients into monsters who wanted to kill and torture. Does he really think that's good for them too? The boy called him a hypocrite. He just wants to prolong his life behind this door. He won't be able to deceive him again. Chen Ge told the boy that he had seen several patients in the third hospital ward in the real world. Each of them belonged to a skinny monster. The boy replied that it was. They were creatures that came from this side, but they were also the weakest. 5 years ago, 7 patients came in here and 4 of them were possessed by the strongest monsters. Patient number 4 suffers from phantom limb syndrome. Patient number 8 suffers from lateral space syndrome. Symmetry and harmony are not beautiful things for him. Patient number 5, who suffers from transformational personality syndrome, thinks that all people are the same person. Patient number 3 is his mother. He knows no one else, but there is someone he needs to be careful with. It was he who came up with the plan to lure him into a trap. Patient number 9. Fei, he has a great memory, but he doesn't communicate with others, thinking that everyone else is just trash compared to him. It was Fei who came up with the plan to lure him into a trap, but Wu Fei is not that hard to deal with. He must be extremely careful with the emerald-faced man. He is the most dangerous one. Chen Ge thanked the boy for his advice. He replied that there was no need to thank him because he wanted to ask him for a favor. Chen Ge decided to try to lure him to his haunted house. He would be a great companion. The boy said he would help him. The boy explained that he was just a personality, and this hospital building was his container. They couldn't kill him. They could influence him by harming his second personality. They can even control him with him. This is what he worries about the most. He asks to protect his second personality. He has no one left in this world. He is his only friend. Chen Ge agreed. The boy explained that staying in this world for too long was harmful to his spirit and body. His mind could suffer from an influx of negative thoughts. He would send him back. If any problems arise, let him come to him at midnight. He will keep the door open for exactly 1 minute. This is the limit of his control. When the boy left, the boy had a feeling that the boy was hiding something from him. Well, what exactly is he hiding? Chen Ge noticed that he was afraid of Zhang Ya. Here the main character heard the meowing of his cat. He saw a white tigress in front of him. The boy was glad that she hadn't abandoned him, but the cat looked at him strangely. Then he realized that Zhang Ya had to go out with him. The animal saw that he was the one. The boy concluded that the cat was apparently also afraid of the ghost girl. He thanked Zhang Ya for saving him. If it weren't for her, he would have been in big trouble. He thanked the ghost girl again and exclaimed that he didn't know what he would do without her. He wanted to tell her something else, but she looked at him strangely. What has he been doing for the last 20 years? He can't even start a conversation with a girl, let alone a ghost. Then the main character came closer to her and asked the girl to go home with him. The level of affection increased. Soon she will reach a new level of passion. The boy wondered why it sounded so dangerous. Zhang Ya might accidentally tear it apart in a fit of passion. In any case, the protagonist decided that it was too early to worry about it. He completely forgot about Stream. I wonder if there was a connection behind the door. When he tried to get in touch, the transmission was blocked. The boy couldn't understand why this happened. He asked Liu Dao why his live broadcast was blocked. Or was it because the black picture was too long? There was an unfamiliar voice on the other side. They told him it was the city's investigative team. The police asked to immediately tell him his location, and then to slowly exit. Liu Dao asked the policeman to give him back his phone. The policeman exclaimed that he was leaving and asked everyone to get ready. The protagonist was surprised by such a greeting. He was told that he was surrounded and asked to raise his hands and not move. The protagonist raised his hands, smiling strangely. The officer took out his weapon and asked him not to move. The two victims were locked in the laundry room of Building 2. Chen Ge asked the police to help them quickly. He asked Liu Dao to look after the cat. The policeman gave the order to send people there quickly. Chen Ge decided that things were bad for him. It would be very difficult to explain everything to the police now. Would they believe him? In front of us is the city police station. A huge tall building rises straight up to the sky. The main character was asked to sit down and was told that the inspector would arrive soon. The policeman asked someone not to worry and said that they would express gratitude to those who took part in this. A couple was thanking the captain for his work. The policeman said that it was his job and pointed to the boy. A man and a woman thanked a police officer for saving their daughter. The protagonist did not understand what they were talking about. He turned his head towards the policeman. The captain in turn told the boy that he did not know what to tell him. Earlier they had discussed at length whether he had broken the law or not. If it weren't for him, the girl would have spent the rest of her life in a cage, and her parents would have lost all hope in their search for their only blood. According to him, they also saved 2 more, but those patients ran away and they were unable to find them. The policeman asked the boy not to worry, as they had already started the investigation and would find them soon. This time he was a good boy, but they decided to temporarily ban him from live broadcasting. But as compensation, they will organize a credit recording. Chen Ge thanked the captain. He said that he had simply acted out of a heightened sense of justice. Sometimes he simply could not control himself. He asked Captain Yan if he really could be free. The captain replied that he didn't have to ask him. They will never punish a person with a clear conscience and a heightened sense of justice. The main character came out of the station and stretched happily. He said that he was very tired. Liu Dao asked the boy if he had solved all the problems. He explained that he had waited for him at the station for half the night. Didn't he say that all the people in the hospital were actors at home with behaviors? He vouched for him to the cops, but he pushed him into hell. His staff was in the hospital, he just didn't see them. Liu Dao said he didn't want to blame him, but he did find something a little strange. Usually when a person enters a mental hospital in the middle of the night and sees that there are victims locked in cages and killers are chasing him with axes, isn't he afraid? But the problem was that he was chasing the killers all over the building with a hammer in his hand. He had been working on this case for 4 years, but he never thought that someone would actually chase after the real killers. Chen Ge replied that he was exaggerating. He was simply doing what any law-abiding citizen would do. To be honest, he has a strong sense of justice. When he saw the victims, he was so angry at how much pain they had suffered that his anger overwhelmed his fear. That's why he dared to pursue the killers. The friend replied that it was too late to say anything now and that it was all his fault. He should have called the police right away. By the time he started broadcasting live, they had already sent a complaint out. The main thing is that he survived, but what was he even thinking? He asked the guy to leave and said that he needed a break after that. He would take a sedative, rest a bit, and contact him. The system informed the main character that he had managed to reach the mission location in time and hold out until dawn. The boy was happy with the reward he had received. The mission completion rate was only 60%. He couldn't think of why. Did Meng Nan's main personality hide something from him, or was it somehow related to the escaped patients? Will the reward for the hidden mission be that little boy? He saw many people in front of him. If he's not mistaken, today is not a holiday. Then why are there so many visitors in front of him? He was met by Xiao Wan. She exclaimed to the boss that he was finally here, and explained that it seemed like all these people came here because of yesterday's broadcast. The boy cast a strange glance to the side. A man greeted him. He looked different somehow, and he said that he suspected that his broadcast was staged. Chen Ge asked the guy who he was and why he said his broadcast was staged. The man replied that he was the manager of the world's largest mobile haunted house, Tian Teng Medical School. His opinion carries a lot of weight in the horror house world. He watched his broadcast, so he came over today to talk to him. Chen Ge asked if Tian Teng Medical School was famous. Someone in the crowd said that they were very famous. It was the largest moving haunted house available on the market these days. They hired a professional haunted house designer from Japan who has over a decade of experience in the field. The makeup, costumes, and every detail of the interior are custom-made. Everything is scary there. Sounds, lighting, special effects, smells. They strive for the most realistic horror. Unlike some unusual haunted houses, the main character got very angry and asked if he came here to promote himself. But the man began inviting the boy to try their haunted house. He hopes that he is not afraid of visiting other people's haunted houses and hands him a piece of paper. The guys around were shouting that they wanted to see the boss in action. They asked him not to worry because he was so brave last night. Once he walked in, they would believe in yesterday. The protagonist realized that these people were in cahoots with him. He agreed and said that he was ready to watch this horror. Could Tian Teng Medical School really be scarier than a real ghost? There was a huge queue in front of him. It must be because he is so popular. It's a good thing they decided to come to this city. Before that, they had a plan to go abroad. What a long queue for tickets. You can't even see the end of the queue here. One of the people exclaimed that he had never visited a Japanese haunted house before. But he wondered, compared to the third hospital ward, what could be scarier? The man told the ladies and gentlemen that the long-awaited Tian Teng Medical School had officially opened in Zhujiang. They are pursuing the absolute. For the most realistic horror, unlike haunted houses that rely on a 50% army, in order to increase their ranking on the internet, they think it is a smart move and some people fall for these dirty tricks. But he finds this method laughable. Chen Ge realized that the man was hinting at him. He said that some people still doubted them, so they invited a special guest. He introduced the owner of the haunted house, Chen Ge. He asked for help in connecting the microphone and radio sensor. Their organization has the most advanced equipment and personnel. If something happens to him during the passage, their people will be able to help him immediately. The girl who attached the sensor to the main character asked him to relax. The man continued to say that they would be able to watch his cardiogram through a projector in real time. They will hear some of the events that will happen on the location. Now they will choose 3 more visitors to accompany Chen Ge. Chen Ge said that there was no need for that. Challenging the haunted house alone was much more fun. If he could scare him, he would admit that his haunted house was not that scary. And on his website, he will advertise his haunted house for a whole month. Just let him introduce Tian Teng Medical School is the best haunted house in Zhujiang for a whole month. The man replied that it was very tempting. But how would they know that they had succeeded in scaring him? The boy replied that they had installed a radio sensor. The normal human heart rate is between 60 and 100 beats per minute. When a person is frightened, the oxygen in the blood decreases and the heart begins to work faster. If his heart rate rose above 100, he would lose. That was the deal they had made. Chen Ge asked him to take his time and asked what would happen if he lost. The man asked him not to worry if they lost. They also admit that their haunted house is not as scary as his. Everyone here will be their witness. Chen Ge replied that he actually had one small request. He thought that there were still a few problems in his haunted house. He hopes his crew will want to visit his haunted house. He has added a new scenario that is not yet open to the public. The man listened to him and replied that no problem. He agreed to his challenge. Then he told the boy that once he entered this door, the game would begin. When Chen Ge entered the door, he saw a man in front of him. He looked very much like a security guard. The man was clicking something on the computer. Important news appeared on the monitor. At the hospital, the police intervened to investigate. Chen Ge realized that the key to moving forward must be the guard. This move is quite interesting. When the main character approached the guard, he asked what he was looking at. Then the guard pointed his finger at the monitor screen. Beads of sweat were running down his cheeks and he pointed his finger at the monitor. The protagonist noticed that the character was a stutterer. It was very professional. The news reported that immoral doctors were selling patients' organs on the black market. Patients whose death has been documented returned the next day. The protagonist noticed that it looked quite realistic. He approached the monitor. Suddenly, the monster woman who was inside said something to him. She opened her mouth with sharp fangs and cried out that he would die. The guard grabbed his head with his hands and started screaming. frightened by this ghost. Chenga said that it was a great scene, but they would only be able to scare him if she was wearing red. The man replied that their haunted house was indeed haunted. If he came across anything strange, he should shout into the camera. Chenga asked that if there really was a ghost here, then at best it would be a lingering spirit, and he wondered if he could use a similar technique in his haunted house. What was that in front of him? He decided to go up and see. The boy noticed that this puppet was very well made. They pay attention to detail, no wonder they are so popular. It's not a bad job, but it's still worse than the dolls in his haunted house. The boy looked at the inscription on the girl's dress, but suddenly, his gaze fell on the box by the wall. He wondered what kind of box it was and what was in it. Surely someone must be hiding in the box. All visitors will be focused on the female body, and when they try to walk past it, the ghost will jump out at them from a box hidden in the corner. The main character really became interested, and he slowly headed towards the closet. The man inside is now waiting for him to pass by so he can jump out and scare him. The boy decided to play a song for the man hidden in the closet. He turned on the song on his phone and brought it to the drawer. The man hidden in the closet was surprised and wondered why this man had not yet come. But what came as a surprise to him was the music that started playing nearby. The man in the closet was seriously scared. Someone was telling him that he would die soon. Today he would die and he would not be able to escape. The boy could not understand what that sound was. He was seriously scared. The guy cowered inside and asked to be let out of there. He began to knock on the cabinet and beg for help. Chenge reached out and opened the drawer. The guy jumped out of the closet and ran away from there. The main character watched him with a smile. He came up behind him and grabbed him by the shoulder. He started coughing and the guy in the closet started screaming. Chenge asked him not to be afraid and said that he was just a visitor. He asked why the boy had fallen and if he was injured. The boy asked not to touch him because he could get up on his own. Chenge asked him if he was sure. After all, he was very pale. The guy replied that it was makeup and asked him to leave him alone. The boy asked him to be careful in this case. In front of him was Tianteng Medical School, and he warned that he had now officially entered Tianteng Medical School. The protagonist found himself in the hands of a ball that had flown towards him. When he looked at it, it was a growling ghost head. Catching her head, Chenge smiled and blushed a little. He began to look at her, and he said that this head was very cute and the sound was pleasant. She did not stop growling. But then he heard another growl. A hand reached out to him and asked if he wanted to take it. The boy gave the hand the head and said that when he was 4 or 5 years old, he ran around with similar heads. The main character exclaimed that time flies very quickly. Childhood passed so quickly. The man behind the wall was very upset. He thought about how Chenge was running around with similar heads when he was 4 or 5. What kind of upbringing was this? Meanwhile, the main character was walking down the corridor and saw surgical rooms in front of him. He greeted him and said that if the man wanted to scare him, then he should scare him faster. Otherwise, he would go inside. The boy replied that he should come in. He would come in and experience true fear. The boy began to laugh. He opened the door and stood on the threshold. In front of him were people, as if with entrails. They were in bloody clothes. Chenge walked up to one of the dolls and said that Japanese and Western haunted houses like this design, why is each doll missing an organ? Or is it a special request from the boss? The tag on one of the dolls said Shujen. Could this be the woman that was shown in the video not long ago? It doesn't look like they were repainted to make them look old. It looks like it was taken from a real hospital. Lingering spirits usually attach themselves to the nearest object at the moment of their death. If all the props they got from a real hospital, there really could be a real ghost in that place. This room is connected to the autopsy room, and the video in the security office was something about illegal organ sales. It must have happened here. This doll seemed unfinished to him. Coming closer, the boy noticed that she had no heart and he became interested in where it was. Could it be that the key is hidden in the heart? He decided that he needed to find her heart. He approached the girl and thought that most likely it was somewhere here. Suddenly, she seemed to come to life, opening her eyes. The girl began to scream, bloody tears flowing from her eyes. She began to stand up and say the word heart. The girl was very scared, but the main character put his hand on her head and began to calm her down. He said that everything was fine, after which the girl mixed with the rest of the dolls. And how should he react to this? This had never happened to him before. The boy thought about what to do now. He called the girl beautiful, after which he asked her not to move. He was so close to her that she could feel his breath. She wondered what he would do next. The girl felt that the boy was very close. He stretched out his hands to her, and he exclaimed that he had found this heart. He took the heart in his hands and pressed it to himself. "I knew the key was in the heart," the girl exclaimed that she forgot to put on makeup today. The main character walked further down the corridor. He came to one door and began to open it. Behind the door, the boy realized that a new scene had now opened up before him. The corridor narrowed by half a meter. It seems that something is hidden behind these walls. The protagonist realized that he was right. The wall on the left side was hollow. He glanced to the side. Above was the sign, Children's Ward. The boy noticed when he entered the children's ward that the acoustics here were very good. Suddenly, one of the children lying in the crib grabbed him by the jacket. The protagonist exclaimed that he was able to catch it. The dummy has no movable joint in its arm, so the child's hand is hollow. He can find traces of wires to catch on his clothes when he passes by. The person controlling this doll must be very close. It has to be very close, otherwise the timing won't be so perfect. Based on this, he should be hiding under the bed. Chen-Ge walked towards one of the beds. He picked it up and looked underneath. There was indeed a fake person sitting there. Chen-Ge wondered what he was supposed to be looking for here. When he entered, the guard didn't tell him anything, so maybe he could. But the guy suddenly stood up and started running away. The main character asked where he was running. He should be the one who's afraid, not that guy. Chen-Ge still didn't understand why he ran away. On the doll, the guy had the inscription Xu Zhen in his hands, "Why her again?" From the moment he entered the haunted house, he constantly sees this name. It must be some kind of psychological trick. He glanced to the side. They had prepared something else. If you take something that belonged to the victim, it will give you the feeling of being haunted by the dead victim. The note was written for her daughter Xu Zhen. This note was probably made to increase visitors' fear of the name Xu Zhen. The main character decided to see who was who. He was going to leave them a little surprise. On the sheet of paper, he added that it was he who wrote it. The boy laughed and asked them not to be afraid. Suddenly, he heard someone's roar. A woman was carrying a lot of dolls on a cart. She growled and approached the boy. These dolls with empty eyes were smiling in the basket. The woman decided that he had swallowed his tongue out of fear, but the boy simply looked at her attentively. He realized that the most interesting thing was outside the room. Chen-Ge smiled slightly. The girl decided that he was very scared, so he didn't even move. The main character came up to him and said hello. She didn't expect such a turn of events. He said there was no track on the floor, so the mechanism was hidden in the wall. She had been squatting in the cart the whole time, which was very ingenious. The woman asked why he was talking to her. The boy replied that her gaze made him feel resentment mixed with hatred. It really did look like a real ghost. The woman thanked the boy. He said that her gaze really did resemble the gaze of a real ghost. She is a great actress. The girl wondered when Chen-Ge left. What did he mean when he said that he looked like a real ghost? Did he really meet them? The main character went further down the corridor and looked into one of the rooms. He became interested in what was there. He saw a man lying in blood in front of him, and he wondered why the dead man's body looked so much like the young man who was hiding under the crib. In front of this man was a radio with a cassette tape. Chen-Ge started to turn it on, checking whether it was a prop. There was a recording on the tape, someone asking to forgive him. He is the director and it is all his fault, she has nothing to do with it. The man asked Jen to run away quickly and said that Dad would hold them back. The main character realized that the local director was the girl's father. The boy thought about it. The man begged his tormentors not to harm his daughter. Following this, a girl's scream was heard and the director shouted at the girl to run. Her end was probably the same as her father's. Chen-Ge saw a newspaper in front of him. It said that 4 years ago, a woman snuck into an abandoned hospital to commit suicide. The woman's name is Xu Zhen. But 10 years ago, she committed suicide in her own office. No matter how realistic the actor's makeup is, visitors intuitively understand that it is fake. Therefore, they must create the image of a real ghost that follows the visitors. Xu Zhen takes on this role, something that cannot be touched, a real ghost. Tiantung Medical School uses a real case to create its own haunted house. Aren't they afraid to summon the real Xu Zhen? The protagonist is completely unprepared for this. Who would have thought that you need to take some equipment with you when going to a haunted house? Zhang Ya, after absorbing the ghost, fell asleep and now ignores it. He hopes he got something. Being empty-handed is not cool at all. Chen-Ge reached into his jacket. There was a cassette tape inside. He was delighted and remembered that this was the tape that had fallen from the roulette. He had completely forgotten that he had put it in his pocket. You can't find a tape recorder like this on sale now. The boy put the cassette into the tape recorder, which was lying on the table. Now that one is right in front of him. He can use it to check the tape. There was a beeping sound, just a monotonous sound. Chen-ge realized that the tape was empty. He approached the dead man and asked if he was trying to take revenge for the humiliation in the children's ward. He said that the guy was very dedicated to the cause, but in this situation he would not be able to protect him. It turns out the guy wasn't dead. There were streams of blood running down his face, and on the tape someone said he was in a lot of pain. The guy raised his head and said that he didn't remember those words. He couldn't understand what was actually happening. Chen-ge noticed that he was so engrossed in his acting that he didn't even notice that he had changed the tape. Chen-ge asked if there was something wrong with his equipment. The guy replied that it seemed so, but the technical problems did not affect the recording. It's just a technical problem and everything will be fine. Then a woman opened the door and told Brother Lin that they were in trouble. When asked what, the woman took out some paper and told the guy that she was back. Something appeared on the note. It was a note on which the main character added that he had written it. The guy noticed, looking at the paper, that the ink on it was fresh. The main character laughed and thought that he did it. The woman continued to say in fear that she was very scared if it could be her. They were both seriously scared. Was she really back? But the guy asked the girl to speak more quietly. The visitor is still here. Chen-ge said that if they didn't make this recording, then who could have? The woman replied that when they were in Shanghai, one of the visitors was so scared that she left in tears. She said one of their actors was being too realistic, but in reality where she was, nothing should have scared her. They asked her to describe the actor and realized that her description matched Zhu Zhen perfectly. Chen-ge thought that the visitor was just playing a joke on them. He asked if it was a joke. The guy explained that this had happened more than once, and after that day, more and more visitors saw Zhu Zhen. Each of them has something to protect themselves from such things. Well, strangely, until today, none of the workers had encountered Zhu Zhen, Chen-ge asked. If the ghost existed, why did they insist on using her name? Why did they scatter hints about her all over the house? Why weren't they afraid to call her? The guy answered that they decided to use a scenario with a real case. The suicide case of Zhu Zhen is quite famous. When visitors saw this name, they immediately remembered that case. They were forced to do so because the number of visitors had decreased in the past 2 years. To maintain their popularity, they had to try something new. Suddenly, the tape started talking again. Someone kept reading that he was in pain,